Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jank Tank, episode number 49. My name is Timothy Zaccanino. I'm going to be your host today. Back from the East Coast with the boys. I've got Christopher and Teld on the line with me, and I got to tell you guys, to the listener, I've been recording on West Coast time for the past 2 years, and Teld and Chris have been recording on East Coast time, which means, if they record at 10 o'clock, it's 7 in the morning for me. But I'm back over here where things make sense and the time zones make sense and the tea is sweet and it's not 7 o'clock in the morning for me. So I'm like actually kind of awake for this.
All right, folks, you've heard it here. We have finally settled the age-old East Coast, West Coast debate. Clear winner.
It didn't take me long. The world, or not the world, but the United States was built off of East Coast time. I can tell you that much for sure. Nothing on the West Coast makes sense. It gets dark at 4 p.m. It's really just wild over there. And you know what? Shout out to Washington and all the cool people I met there. But I'm more at home here. I am happy to be back on the East Coast, and I'm happy to be recording at 10 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. So hopefully you get me at my best instead of me at my sleepiest. But we're talking Edge of Eternities cube today for our mainline cube. We will be doing a Peasant Cube episode with Danielius at some point, but we're having some scheduling issues right now. I'm going to be out of town for next week's pre-release. He's out of town doing some Commander thing this weekend, so stay tuned. That'll be coming. It might be a little bit later than usual, but today we're looking at Edge of Eternities from a higher perspective, from a higher power level perspective, in the context of our mainline cube, which includes rares, mythics, all the bonus sheet stuff and stuff like that. Housekeeping stuff, let's go ahead and get that out of the way, and then I've got a question to kind of lead us into this set. But first, remember the best way to support Jank Diver Gaming and the Jank Tank podcast is to join the Discord server. Come draft with us and give us your feedback, especially about all this new stuff from Edge of Eternities. I will say we're something like 11 or 12 members away from hitting that 1,000 mark, which was kind of a goal of mine for this year. So come join us, even if it's just to, up the number and, give me the endorphin hit. Jank Diver Gaming Discord is a great place to hang out with like-minded individuals and talk about Cube, Retail Limited, all things Magic. You can find links to that Discord server wherever you're listening to this podcast. We host tons of scheduled drafts throughout the week, including our Peasant Cube on Saturday nights, the Mainline Cube, which will be the focus of today's episode, on Sunday nights. We have F&M style drafts on Fridays where our players vote on a cube to play, and we have various guest cubes created by members of our server throughout the week, so there's always plenty to do. You can find us on our socials, Twitter at JankDiverGaming, YouTube.com/JankDiverGaming, and you can find Teld streaming on Twitch.tv/TeldTalks or on the Teld Talks YouTube channel, where I believe you posted something recently.
Yeah, I've been posting some Peasant Cube drafts. I've been trying to get better about recording and editing them. I've got one I'm working on that the audio is messed up, but I'm going to end up trying to submit that one. And I think we're going to use that audio to try to do something potentially new with the Jank Diver channel. A little draft analysis, talk through some stuff.
Yeah.
So Maybe if we can work out some time, we'll get that. I mean, back to school starting here soon, so I might be extremely busy here in the very near future.
Yeah, we've got a plan for that, but I think we're going to do a flip-flop where as soon as my time frees up, you're probably going to get busy again. So we'll see if we can get that in there. It is something exciting that we've talked about a little bit, but I guess Edge of Eternities wise, I guess the first question for you guys is like, how does the space aesthetic hit you? Like, I don't want to compare it directly to Star Wars, but like, does that whole like space opera setting like really do it for you? Do you feel like this gels with Magic? We'll talk more about like initial thoughts and stuff at the end of the episodes, but just like point blank beginning of the set, looking at the art and stuff like this, does this hit? Does it feel like one of those hat sets? Like, how are you feeling about, Magic in space?
I personally like it. I mean, I guess I've mostly looked at the white and black cards, but I think some folks are kind of having a feeling that it's just Magic in space, and then that's true, and I can understand being disappointed in that, but what I like is the aesthetic of the black and white cards feels like a Dominarian, like, original series of Magic archetypes type stuff, but transposed onto space, and I do enjoy that. They didn't reinvent the wheel or anything.
Yeah, I think this is closer to a traditional Magic set than some of the more meme sets. I mean, I'm going to make jokes about dudes in spacesuits, I'm sure, but I think generally speaking, there's a lot of really great art pieces, which does a lot to sell me on it. The ones that I particularly like tended to be the more abstract, weird, voidy stuff. the really weird monsters and like the kind of 40K vibes, the real dark fantasy on some of these. The like Among Us, dudes in spacesuits, you know, campy sci-fi art isn't really my jam. I'm sure that some people are going to like that, but I tended to like the more weird and dark sort of vibes, and there's a blend of that. So I think they did a pretty good job of balancing this. They slipped in some memes, but it's not quite as flagrant as it was in some of the sets last year. So I think this was a decent job of being a set with a very specific aesthetic vibe they were trying to get while keeping it within like the Magic framework.
Yeah, did you see there's an actual Among Us, like direct Among Us reference?
We're jamming the guy in the evac airlock or whatever.
Yeah, they got to get those in. I mean, I'm not like a Star Wars nerd or anything like that, but I agree. I think the aesthetic is pretty cool. I like monster designs and stuff like that. I think the factions all kind of look like within the colors. A lot of the cards look very samey. Like a lot of these blue jellyfish creatures kind of look like interchangeable, and a lot of the white, like I guess space soldiers or whatever they're supposed to be, look very interchangeable, but at least there's like common ground between them, which I think is kind of what Chris is getting at there, is like it feels like they're part of a faction or something like that. I guess to the Warhammer point, you know, it feels like they kind of coexist and stuff like that, and that's fine. It's probably going to be a little annoying and limited when some of the cards look like some of the other cards, but like
I am glad we went with more of a, like, there's a, I guess, dark fantasy plus like, I guess you call it like pulp fantasy. Like if you look at the special guests, they're kind of doing like the old, like they're like, I don't remember what it was called, but it's the pulp fantasy sci-fi equivalent. They went with more of that than Star Trek sort of vibes, and I'm really glad for that because Star Trek is super cringe. Star Wars these days is pretty cringe too.
There goes Teld throwing a whole fan base under the bus.
Yeah, I feel like it's safer to hate on Star Trek now than it was, because like the hardcore Trekkie fan base I feel is like really late stage Gen X, or really late stage Boomers, early stage Gen X, and like the fandom of Star Wars has been preserved because Disney likes to print money, and that ended up being the easier way for them to print money. So it's more well known. But yeah, it's you're safer hating on Trek now than Star Wars.
I'm hating on both, just to be clear. I like don't get me wrong, I like the old Star Wars movies and stuff, but like Star Wars has been cringe for at least a decade.
It's funny because I'm replaying Final Fantasy 12 right now, and its storyline is like exactly Star Wars. Right down to like, except like, of course, they made like the Chewbacca character like a sexy bunny lady in heels whose ass is always in the shot for some reason. But it's just Star Wars.
I mean, the reason for that, of course, is that Star Wars is the classic hero's journey, and it's like it's one of the most classic narrative tales you could ever tell. Like he did a good job of telling it, but like it is a very much a classic narrative.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we've lost all the Star Trek and Star Wars people who were listening...
Hey, I just said I was playing Sexy Bunny Star Wars in my spare time. I'm clearly a fan.
Yeah, no, if we're talking about original trilogy Star Wars, that was actually really good. I'm talking about the stuff made after, like, the late 2000s.
Why is everybody so into Andor? I tried. Whatever. Anyway.
Right.
Moving right along.
Let's not jump down that rabbit hole right now, that sexy bunny rabbit hole or whatever. I guess thematically, look, it's magic in space. Like
Tim, you did not just say sexy bunny rabbit hole. You did not just say that.
Okay, well, when you repeat it, there's some context that I didn't mean when I said it, but we really don't. You
didn't know that you meant.
That's a different podcast. That's a late night podcast for sure.
An after dark podcast for sure.
Yeah, save that for your other podcast, Chris.
Okay.
Jank Diver at night. Yeah, we don't read this. Look, none of us here read the story. I'm sorry. This story has something to do with being a one-off that's like exists outside the blind eternities, and Tezzeret's there blowing up planets because it looks cool, I guess. But like the story kind of didn't matter before, but it absolutely doesn't matter now that you're getting all like half of the sets every year at Universes Beyond. You're just gonna lose track of the story by the time it comes back around. So,
although if you're listening to this, Harold, come back from the store with the milk. We need you to explain the magic story for us.
Yeah, Harold is our resident lore master, as it were. So that's all to say, like, I'm sorry if we miss like something referencing the lore, we probably don't understand what's going on with that, but whatever. Logistically, it is worth pointing out there is a bonus sheet here, 2 sets in a row with bonus sheets, actually. This is the Stellar Sights bonus sheet. It's comprised entirely of, lands, a lot of historically powerful lands, and then some really, really bad ones, like Crystal Quarry and Meteor Crater made it on this list somehow. I get that they're, like, fun flavor nods, but wow, are those terrible cards.
You pointed out too that they didn't give us Dryad Arbor, and in retrospect that seems like a mistake.
Yeah, they could have put Dryad Arbor in this list. They probably didn't want to deal with the implications of that. That card is a heinous design for rules implications, but it's 45 cards. They're all rare or mythic, so we won't actually get to talk about any of them for the Peasant Cube, which I was a little bit disappointed by. And we're not going to filter in a lot of them because they're all lands. We'll have a section at the end of this episode where we highlight some of the notable Stellar Sights cards. A lot of the art's really pretty, though. I'll give it that. And we've got special guests here, which they look terrible. They're like this weird old timey poster art. We will talk about exactly one of them, but the art is kind of off-putting when you put it next to other Magic cards. But yeah, there's a lot of extra stuff here on top of the stuff from this set, which we've noted before this episode that this is a really powerful set. There's a lot of really individually powerful cards, but a lot of it is so thematic and tied up in things like artifacts and, things like this and casting from exile and stuff that there's not actually a lot of generically good stuff that we're going to talk about. So we stretched a little bit to get some extra cards on this list today, but it is a strong set, just maybe for us, not as strong as the typical set. Mechanics, there's a couple headlining mechanics and then some smaller ones. I guess I'll lead us into Warp unless Chris, I know you had mentioned once that Warp you thought was pretty intriguing. Did you want to talk us through the Warp mechanic here?
No, you go ahead. I mean, I have thoughts,
cool.
But
Sure.
you'll be better for.
I'll take this one because it's a play on one of my favorite mechanics. So I'll take this one.
Go for it.
So Warp allows you to cast a card for its Warp cost. It's usually, I think it's always cheaper. There might be one exception to that, but generally it's a cheaper alternate cost. And you cast the card, and you exile the permanent at the end step. And then you can cast it from exile on a later turn. So it's kind of like Evoke, but instead of your creature immediately dying at the end step, it goes on an adventure and you can recast it. So the comps would be Evoke and Adventure. It's pretty cool because you end up getting these effects twice. And they allowed them to, on a couple of these cards, to play around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they kind of held their punches on a lot of cards, but there were a few of these Warp cards that stuck out to me. And one that I'm going to talk about, or we're going to talk about, that I think I'm only interested in it because of the Warp cost. Not that the card isn't playable, but it's a card that I don't think I would be contemplating for this cube if it didn't have such a decently efficiently costed Warp cost. So there's a few cards like that where I think the Warp is really carrying the weight, but I think they held their punches enough that there's maybe 3 to 4 Warp cards that we're going to actually talk about here.
Yeah, I think it's a cool design space. You have the obvious things that you can set up. This is an ETB creature that's expensive, but if I warp it, I get the ETB. And then it'll exit on end step, whatever. But there's interesting things you can do with this, where you can have a creature with warp on it that has a static effect that you want to sneak out for cheap just to be on the board, so it does its thing while you do other things, and then it'll come back later. Warp to me is one of those mechanics where conceptually it's very straightforward, but the number of design levers it can interact with on a card, varying from card type to card type, is really, really broad. So I think that this is a great mechanic. I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it's also notably very, very busted with any sort of blink effect, because the card sits in play for a while. So you can even use the sorcery speed blink effects, and some of the more powerful Warp cards, you warp them in for cheap, you get the ETB, you blink it in the same turn, you get the other ETB, and now your creature stays in play. So really, really powerful there. But I think they kind of designed with that in mind as well.
Yeah, so I think this is actually the headliner mechanic of the set. I know it's supposed to be the spacecrafts and stuff, but it feels like so much of the set was designed with Warp in mind rather than space. In fact, the spacecrafts are probably only playable because of Warp. There's also the Void mechanic, which plays directly into Warp. So this is a mechanic that only appears on red and black cards, and it's basically you get a bonus on your card if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or if a spell was warped. That part's not going to matter so much for cube gameplay, but if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, you get a void bonus. So very similar to Revolt, except it doesn't work with lands, which was one of the easiest ways to trigger Revolt, but it does work if your opponent's permanents leave the battlefield. So you can use your kill spells to pop out something on the opponent's side of the field and basically turn your void stuff online. There are no instant speed void effects unless you like grant things flash or something. So everything kind of works at sorcery speed. There's no like gotchas if your opponent sacks something. Everything's sorcery only. It's kind of, we'll talk about a couple void cards here. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of like a morbid style mechanic. It is questionable like how often you'll be able to turn it online if you can't like sack a fetch land to turn it online. That probably hurts its chances for like constructed or something like that, but there's a couple generically powerful void cards we'll talk about here.
Yeah, you basically have to ask, like, is the floor high enough that you would consider putting the card in your deck if you never trigger void? And then, like,
that's exactly right. Yep. That brings us to what station and spacecraft. So these kind of go hand in hand. This is kind of like vehicle and crew, or, you know, mounts and saddles. So the station mechanic exists on these new spacecraft cards and also exists on a cycle of lands. And it basically lets you tap a creature, an untapped creature at sorcery speed, to add charge counters equal to that creature's power. So if you station a 5 power creature, you put 5 charge counters on the spacecraft or on the planet or whatever. And it's sorcery speed only, thank God. That's all station does. There's no other real text on station, but what that allows you to do is turn these spacecrafts into creatures. Once a spacecraft hits a certain number of charge counters, it becomes an artifact creature, and then they usually have like attack triggers and stuff like that they gain, or, you know, they become flying monsters instead of just like little bricks and stuff like that. Teld, you have opinions about this in particular. Chris, I'm interested in your take on spacecraft, but just to kind of like throw it out there, it feels like the numbers on pretty much every single card with station were jacked up high enough that this just isn't an achievable thing outside of like Commander specifically. It feels like they just made it so that you have to leave yourself vulnerable to attacks so often that it's just not worth playing these spacecraft cards at all.
Yeah, I mean, the way that they're templated, if you ever played with the level up mechanic, it's kind of templated like that, where once you get to certain power break points, it does. But yeah, it's weird because a lot of them, even once you invest, like, I mean, we're talking double digits worth of power in a lot of these cards. Even after you invest that, a lot of times you still have to get to your attack, which is like, all right, well, I just invested, 10 power into, for example, there's one called Dawnsire's Sunstar Dreadnought, and you have to invest 10 power, and then it does 100 damage to a creature when it attacks. So you invest all this power into these cards, and then your opponent, bounces it.
They abrade it.
Yeah, they abrade it. Like, it's such a big tempo hit, to the point that I kind of have been saying my piece about it is that if this mechanic is even good in limited, like where you're actively interested in putting these in your deck more than like 1 or 2, I think this format's going to be terrible for me personally. Like, this feels like it'll just be another Aether Drift slugfest. And I think that sounds awful. And there's so many spaceships that or spacecrafts that I'm kind of worried that's going to be the case. Usually I'm like I said, I'm kind of hoping, I think the format will be better if this effect is terrible. But if usually they don't whiff on the big mechanics super often. So like, I kind of am worried that, I mean, they did whiff on vehicles in Aether Drift, so there is hope. But I really don't want these cards to be good, and I don't think they're good.
They all look so unanimously terrible to me that I have to assume that I'm wrong, and that they did their like testing and stuff, and they got it right, and that they will actually work out. But to me, it feels like in order to fully station a spacecraft, you basically have to put the card Sleep in your opponent's hand. Like the 4 mana, tap all your opponent's creatures, keep them tapped down. It feels like that's what you're doing, is you're spotting your opponent asleep, because you're going to have to tap. And this is where warp comes into play. A lot of the warp creatures have cheap warp costs and high power, so they can, charge up your spacecraft. There's a lot of other stuff in the set that's designed to kind of, get your spacecrafts going and stuff like that. But outside of the context of specifically limited and maybe Commander, where boards just go big anyway, like in cube setting, it's just not going to happen. We're talking about 1, and it's kind of like a side grade anyway.
Chris, did you have any thoughts on them? Or
no. I honestly, okay. I saw the first couple, and I know that I should not have done this, or maybe even be admitting that I did do this because we're doing a review set. But I saw enough of them with like staggering enough numbers on them, and I was like, someone will tell me if any of these are interesting.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I believe we're talking about exactly one of these today.
Yeah, I mean, I saw enough. I think I saw one that had like 17 on it or something, and I was like, okay, like that's basically your opponent's life total. Like somebody tap me if something interesting happens.
Yeah, it's kind of like if a battle had a flip cost of like 8 on it or something.
Yeah,
like go kill your opponent instead. Like even the battle 3s, you don't always.
Well, it would be like if they had spoiled like the first like 5 battles and they all had like 8 health, and it would be like, okay, well, someone will let me know. Yeah, wake me up if like something happens, kind of.
Yeah, so 5 minutes to explain why spacecraft sucks for Cube, basically.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Hopefully they work for Limited, whatever. And the planets, don't get me started on the planets, but the artifact token. So the lander token is a new artifact token that I can't imagine we're ever going to see again because it's called a lander token for some reason, but it's a rampant growth. You pay 2 mana, you sack it, you go search for a basic land, you put it on the battlefield tap. Kind of cool.
It's called a lander because it gets you a land when you land on the planet.
Okay. So anyway, and then there is a one-off instance of this munitions token, which is just a blank token that says when it leaves the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target, but it only appears on 1 card, which feels like a huge missed opportunity to me because Mark Rosewater put it in his teaser that, he said there's a new artifact token named munitions, but that ended up being the...
Well, that sounds like something Morrow, like it sounds like he did that on purpose. Like the reason that we find he found it cute for the same reason that we found it irritating. Which seems to be a special
Munitions would have been a sick token type to get to, where you could like. Anyways, I don't want to get on to all the ways that this could have made a very, very interesting mechanic for Limited, but know that we wanted more of this. We didn't get it, but we wanted more of this.
Yeah, the lander tokens are the more important one. They're in the kind of Naya spectrum. There's a couple blue cards that deal with them as well. And then there's a new land type called planets. It exists on a cycle of mythic rare lands. There's nothing in the set that references planets, so just know that it exists. It's like spheres or whatever, but there's no reason to actually care that something's a planet. So those are the mechanics, kind of the big headliners being Warp, Void, and the new spacecraft / station. And for our purposes, like Void and lander tokens are kind of the only ones that really matter, or Warp, Void, and lander tokens, and spacecraft station, like, I don't know, leave it for another review, leave it for your like Star Wars review or whatever. But all right, mechanics out of the way, logistics out of the way, are we ready to talk about some actual Magic the Gathering cards?
I think so. Teld is going to be back in a second. Let's just go ahead and get as much of this dumped on him as we can.
Yeah, let's go. Actually, let me pinpoint any of the cards that he put on the list, and
we'll just skip right over
just
them. Trash
talk them real quick. And
or that, just like take it, like literally piss on them out the window as we speed by.
Yeah, like how could you possibly put this card on the list? Anyway, let's go ahead and kick off here with Lightstall Inquisitor in white. So this is a single white mana for a 2/1 Angel Wizard, which is just a very gnarly stat line for a 1-drop white creature. It has Vigilance, and when it enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand and may play it as long as it remains exiled. Each spell cast this way costs 1 more to cast, and each land played this way enters tapped. So Savannah Lions with Vigilance and a tiny little disruption ability on it. I'm actually very, very curious what your take on this is, Chris, because I know we've collectively kind of been down on the Savannah Lions template, but it also feels like they've been trying to juice it lately.
So this card is going to be kind of hard to evaluate, I think, because this is like, I can't remember what content creator it was. They don't make Cube content anymore, but they used to bring this up as a concept. I thought it was kind of interesting. Some cards, you can't tell how much of an impact they had until your opponent tells you after the game, like, I really wanted to do this, but I couldn't because you did that. If that makes sense.
The old Mother of Runes thing, right? Like
kind of, yeah. So, like, I think that there's going to be occasions when this is just a 2/1 Vigilance and it really doesn't interrupt your opponent's kind of curve at all. And then I think sometimes it's going to come down and it's going to present them with like a really annoying decision that ultimately kind of leads them to play off curve on one of the opening turns and kind of like sneaky wins you the game. This is a card that I want to be exactly what we're looking for, but I think we're just going to have to play with it because like, and every card is context dependent, obviously, right? But like this card is so context dependent, and when you play it, it's going to be impacting a context that you don't even have visibility into. I want this to be good. I remember I was like, God, why do they keep putting Vigilance on tiny white creatures? It makes no sense. And then somebody was like, Station, and then it's like, oh, right, okay. But Yeah, I would. Wait for it. Wait for it. I wish it was a 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'm interested to see how this plays. I'm not gonna offer a prescription. I'm not gonna tell you that I have any idea how this is gonna pan out.
This is a spot where I wonder if this card would have been too good if it had either A, been random, or B, been a thought seize effect. Like where you got to look at your opponent. Maybe looking at your opponent's hand, just the information would probably be
On turn
push.
one, that might have. Yeah, I love where your head is at. I love the idea of that card, like opening on a 2-power creature and interrupting the first thing that's going to slow that 1-power creature down, even by that seems really, really strong on turn one. That seems like potentially game winning, not game winning on turn one, but setting up a snowball.
Yeah, I do think this could have been pushed to like not giving your opponent a choice, or make maybe
yes,
I think
random would have been nice.
It does remind me of a. So I used to play Marvel Snap, and I'm off that game at this point for non-gameplay related reasons. But there's a card in there called Iceman, and it's a 1-mana 2-power creature, which is different than Magic, but like know that 1 for 2 is like decent but not great. And it does kind of a similar thing where it taxes an opponent's card by 1. And I will say that card, that card is pretty annoying. And it is random, so it's better than this. But like the 1-mana tax, or like the that you get on this, as long as your opponent doesn't have like a surveil land to, kind of punk you with it. It is going to be annoying. It may not be game warping or anything or game breaking, but it is going to be the kind of thing that's pretty obnoxious and will be even better on mulligans. That's one thing that this card is pretty good about. Will be punishing mulligans where you'll have less options for, to start with.
First off, Iceman wasn't random. It always hit whatever card you needed to play next turn. So let's not act like that was actually truly random. Yeah, this card seems cool, but like Chris said, it's going to be completely context dependent. Like it probably gets a small knock that we're trying to move away from aggressive white creatures, but I mean, this has a little bit of value attached to it. And like Teld said, sometimes it's going to tag a card that already enters tapped, or, right. You're going to draw this on turn 4 or 5 and it's not really going to affect your opponent. But being able to curve this into like a Thalia, like these tax it into Elite Spellbinder, that's what white like excels at, is just piling these taxation effects on top of each other. So yeah, I really like the design here. I think if you pushed it in any direction other than maybe random, it would probably be just super obnoxious, especially when you start like piling multiples of these on together and construct it or whatever.
Could have made it a 1/1 flyer. It would have also been probably better than this.
A 1/1 flyer would have been nice. One thing I want to say real quick is like, yes, we are in theory trying to move away from white aggressive creatures, but I just want to like make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that like we're not moving away from white 1-drop aggressive creatures because we don't want white to be an aggressive color. Like we'd be moving away from them because they're bad. Like if white just got a slew of really, really strong 1-drops and it was like, oh, well, white's aggro 1-drops are as good as other colors' aggro 1-drops, then there wouldn't be an incentive to be looking for alternatives, right? So like we should be keeping, like if this is a good, like if they start printing 2/1 stat lines that do great things like Kellen, then like we should still be paying attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like they're trying to move in that direction. Like they kind of missed with Basri, but you kind of get what they're going for with stuff like that. So
yeah, Basri was just Savannah Lions, it turns out.
Yeah, you didn't exert it very much. Next card, Slam Dunk. We don't get a lot of Slam Dunks in this review, but we're kicking off white with a Slam Dunk.
Why are they always 3-drops, though? Come on.
It's got to be a 3-drop, man.
It has to be a 3-drop. So. They just need to start printing like white dorks. How about that? Like all amazing 3-drops and 1-drops that accelerate into them somehow.
Well, red might get to do that soon, but I don't know that white's getting to do that anytime soon. Cosmo Grand Zenith is 2 and a white for a 2/4 mythic rare human soldier. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, choose one. Create 2 1/1 white human soldier tokens, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I mean, it's all right there. This card seems amazing to me. And you guys know I'm a Clarion Spirit lover. I really liked Corey Steelcutter. Ended up even being too strong for our cube. I know it got cut from standard and everything, but wow, I mean, if you can flurry, you just get to build your own board, and then it also has the payoff for having a built-up board. Like, everything I want in a kind of white go wide style card. It makes the tokens, and it also pays you off for having the tokens.
Yeah, I do think this card's like on its face pretty good, very good even. But like I will say one thing that remains to be seen is that Flurry is much easier to trigger when all your cards are really, really cheap. And as you put, like for example, if you pair Clarion Spirit with a 2-drop, to trigger it, that only takes 4 mana. And this is going to take 5 to do the same thing, which is a lot more, right? Like, I mean, mana doesn't work linearly in Magic. It works, logarithmically. And so, you know, having 5 mana to do this is a lot harder than it's going to be for something like Quarry Steelcutter or Clarion Spirit. Obviously still very good. It's just going to be harder to get that first turn, instantly trigger it for value. And I don't know if this is the kind of card that, like, obviously in some spots you will play it just as a 3-drop, but unless you have a Mishra's Bauble, which Mishra Bauble gang
there
keep
it is.
winning,
I was waiting for it. Yep.
You know, that you're not going to trigger this on turn 3 and probably not even on turn 4. I mean, like, if you cast it on turn 3, you're likely to trigger it on turn 4. But what I mean is if you have 4 mana, you're unlikely to trigger it the turn you play it, unless you have really prioritized having a pile of cheap spells.
Yeah, I think this is a card that you kind of, at least in the way that the pace of our games run, you need to evaluate as a card that you're probably going to need to untap with. Either that or have like a really, really high density of 1 mana spells in your deck. But obviously, like, if you activate it even once, then you don't. I mean, activating it again is amazing, but it's amazing if you activate it once. So this card is also interesting to me because I've been, you know, when I have been thinking about Magic, I've been thinking about white a lot, and one of the ways that I've been thinking about how white, like, can compete on a go for it is just start giving us piles of creatures that just have, like, great value. This has me thinking of, like, this and Clarion Spirit have me, like, kind of like chomping at the bit for more ways for white to generate creature-based card advantage, because this is obviously, like, cards like this, not only that they want you to be able to double spell in the same turn, like, ideally you'd like to be able to do that, but cards like this really want you to be able to draw more cards, right? So if we start seeing...
this actually pairs really well with blue cantrips, which I think have been on a bit of a downturn lately.
Yeah, and the same is true for Clarion Spirit too, right?
Which is more important with this, because Clarion Spirit, you can just put, like, 12 2-drops in your deck and you'll trigger it every turn. This, like, with the 1 mana cantrips, you know, is going to be much more reliable at happening on turn 4. I do think, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris, but one other thing about this that's really nice is that it can create instant stats in the mid game if you have the cards. And I think that's something, like, by instant stats, I mean effectively haste stats. You know, compared to a card like Clarion Spirit or, you know, Seer Slicer Goblin, these, like, make dudes every turn cards. This one having the counters option means that you can just be like, all right, I play this, I play my, you know, my other card to trigger it, and now I put, you know, 3 extra power into play immediately for this turn.
Yeah. So this interests me a lot, not just in terms of a standalone card, but as a potential signal for the way white decks accrue value and function on, like, a go forward. So we'll have to see. Again, 3-drop with so many goddamn amazing white 3-drops. That's not where the color is currently lacking. So this is a little frustrating.
This reads to me like what I wanted Monastery Mentor to be for white, but, like, actually in white instead of being, like, a slant blue-red card or whatever. But...
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Teld, how about 2 bodies for 2?
Ah, yes. Great segue there.
God, this card hurts me so much.
Next up is Honored Knight Captain. Is 1 and a white for a human advisor knight at uncommon. It's a 1/1, and when it enters, it makes a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. You can pay 4 white, sacrifice this creature, search your library for an equipment card, and put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. I only put this on here because we're not currently on Resolute Reinforcements. We've talked about potentially bringing it back in a possible, you know, more tokensy update for white. And I think, at least at mainline level, where we have access to some truly powerful equipment, I think the marginal upside of being able to go fetch your Embercleave is more relevant than the marginal upside of having Flash in the decks that want this sort of effect. Willing to be wrong on that, but I think that this can go fetch Cleave or go fetch, like, Cryptic Coat to sneak in some damage is probably better.
I'm not sure where I'm at on this. I see 6 and I'm like, you know, like, obviously, and people wouldn't touch Raise the Alarms and Resolute Reinforcements with, like, a 10-foot pole for whatever reason, despite me thinking that, like, hey, this actually fits with, like, a lot of what your deck is doing. So I think if people are going to read this as if the activated ability is too expensive, then they're just going to see it as worse Resolute Reinforcements and not draft it. But we have enough of a toolboxy equipment thing going on with, you know, Stoneforge in our cube that, like, this actually does get a pretty wide variety of things. And then like if you want to talk peasant level and stuff like that, like obviously you're sacking this to go get something with like for Mirrodin or Job Select or whatever. So it's kind of just upgrading the 1/1 body into a stronger creature that has an equipment on board. But six is just a lot. So I mean that's the thing that's hurting it. The design is very cool. There's some potential with it, but it's the 6 mana that's like the question mark for us. And I don't think any of us really have a good answer for like how that's going to play out at that cost.
Yeah, and I want to be mentioned that we are talking about when I mentioned this card, it is when I say marginal, I mean I don't think the flash or the 6 mana effect are very good. I think this is just a very small upgrade because it can kill your opponent out of nowhere.
This falls into a class of card that like really like sends me into fits because I really, really adore the art on this card. And it is at a mana value and has an effect that I am looking for. And they put all of that in a package together onto an uncommon that doesn't get there. And this happens to periodically where I'm like, oh my god, like I like the art so much, like I wish that you had like made this exact card basically, but better. Six is too much, I think. I'm not saying it's like it's nothing, but for our rare power level, I just like don't think it's enough. And like these kind of 2 mana make multiple bodies. I want to like I think this is what White really, really, really wants, right? Because there's so many good ways to pay off putting a bunch of stuff into play. But then they're generally pretty conservative with the stuff that actually puts a bunch of stuff into play. Right?
Can I interest you in a 2 mana 1/2 that makes a 2/1 and then flips into a Broken Planeswalker?
You could interest me in that if
If it wasn't a cat. As long as it's not a cat.
If it made dog tokens, we'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of starting to feel like the Magic design team or, like, the kind of people with tokens, like, they can't party. You know, they're not the kind of people that can have 3 beers, right? If they're going to have a beer, they're going to drink a case. And, like, otherwise they're going to teetotal, and that's why you can't take them anywhere, and that's why you can't have nice things.
Does it change your opinion that this is a knight and therefore Dion jumps it up into the air on your turn?
I had not considered that.
Although the token it makes is not a knight for some, it's not even the same creature type. I mean, dissection tools, like being able to sack this to go get a 4/4 lifelink at instant speed is not nothing like your Batter Skull.
No, it's not. But I mean, like the other thing that's cool about this is like in theory, right? And if the effect was cheaper, I think I would actually be really excited about it.
If this was like 4 mana, I would be chomping at the bit. I think like even at 4, that would just be like crazy good. I think
right
with the level of equipment we have access to for pushing damage.
They'd probably have to gate something, right? Because isn't there like a living weapon card that's like 7 mana, but then like the token that is like it's like indestructible haste bajillion blah blah blah.
Cauldron complete.
Yeah, like so you'd probably have to gate the mana value or something, which is something which is a lever I don't see them like tug enough, I think, and it's one of the reasons that they're such chickens about like tutors and reanimation effects. It's just like just mana gate what you can do with it, and then you can do that, and it doesn't seem complicated to me. But like one like cool line of play, and this I don't think this is basically ever going to happen because it's so expensive. But if this ability was cheaper, right? You make 2 bodies. Like a really cool line of play is like sacrifice this guy, go get Assimilation and Aegis, exile something, and then like the 1/1 that's left behind can put on the Aegis and become the thing that you exiled. Like that's cool conceptually, but 6 mana is just such a shitload of mana. Interesting card. I really wish that they had used this art on something that we were interested in playing, but this doesn't quite get there for me.
You were mentioning the art on the next card here.
Oh yeah,
like that, Chris?
So this next card is Sunstar Chaplain. It's 1 and a white for a 3/2, which once upon a time would have been really exciting, but it's really par for the course now. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And then 2 generic, remove a +1/+1 counter from creature you control, tap target artifact or creature. So I think that this is an interesting card. The reason it came up a bunch on the internet is this artist is apparently very well regarded. And one thing I have noticed also is if art looks weird now, people are automatically like, this is AI art. This to me is pretty clearly not AI art. It's just like the perspective on it is very, very strange. So there's a lot of discussion of this card on the internet just because the sense of proportionality in the picture is so weird. This seems fine. You probably have better options. It kind of feels like it has like a weird combination of like Luminarch Aspirant and Honorbound Initiate. kind of vibes going on with it, but I don't think that it quite gets there. I just wanted to call it out because it's a 2-drop that like looks potentially playable, but if you play it onto an empty board, it's just a 3/2 for 2.
Yeah, this reads to me as fixed Luminarch Aspirant when Luminarch Aspirant is in its twilight years in terms of cube power level. And that is not where we need to be. Like, we could have pushed this a little more, I think. Even though, like, you know, you hate to see game warping rares, especially at lower mana values, I think, like, this could have been a 3/3, for example, and maybe that's a little too good, but, like, we could have turned a knob somewhere to make this, if nothing else, more interesting, because, like, getting your counters in the end step is a lot less good than getting your counter at the beginning of combat. It's getting 2-tap creatures to survive combat. I get the joke is that you're stationing, but in terms of actual cubing, you know, most of the time this is going to be we had to attack. And so, like, that's not trivial. That is a pretty big hoop to jump through. And then we don't stun. I get that white doesn't get stun counters very much. So, like, I understand why that is. But all of these things just read to me as, like, why did we need all of these floodgates on this card?
Yeah, why did we need to gate this in so many different ways? Yeah,
make it 7 too.
Yeah, just make it
Bite
7 too. Yeah.
That being said, I mentioned this before we started recording. I think the art is hilarious because it's got the "don't talk to me or my kid ever again" vibe on it, and it just like it really projects that, and it's very funny art. I agree. I don't really think this is AI art. It's just a weird perspective and like silly dudes in spacesuits concept.
That pisses me off so much because anytime someone doesn't like one of the articles we write for Draft Sim, they're like, was this written by AI? It's just the insult to make now. It irritates the shit out of me. But
I think the growing use of AI art in like a commercial product like this is something that people can be concerned about, and that like totally legitimate, but just accusing everything you don't like of being AI is kind of polluting the well a little bit for legitimate critiques.
Pee critique. Was the next card the warp card that you were referencing early on, like the one you were excited about? Or
yeah. This one is another peasant card that kind of stuck out to me. So this is All Fate's Stalker. It's 3 and a white for a 2/3 Drix Assassin. So Drix is upgrading in his
R.I.P. Drix. Sorry, Drix.
When this creature enters, exile up to 1 target non-assassin creature. You know, there's so many assassins in Magic, so this is probably pretty limited. It better have a pretty good warp effect. And it warps for 1 and a white. And so the way I'm seeing this card is it's kind of like 1 and a white for like sorcery speed ephemerate, which it also has some flexibility. You can like exile an opponent creature to push through damage. You can do that and accrue a vehicle like a smuggler's copter or something like that. And then you kind of conjure a sort of clunky Banisher Priest, but even though Banisher Priests are not at their premium, I think the total package here has me interested, even if I'm not 100% convinced that it's actually good, but like, I do think there's something here. Especially at Peasant, I'm like, this card's got me, you know, full on. But like in mainline, I still think there's enough going on here that I'm at least curious. I think you guys can probably easily walk me off the ledge if you know you guys don't like it. But it did kind of perk me up as like I raised an eyebrow when I saw it because it feels like a very good overall package of cards.
This seems. First of all, love the art. Really, really like this art. This is like one of the better examples of what I like about the aesthetic of the set. I like things that are this polished, I'm coming to find. Speaking of which, I have like a micro rant to go on about how amazing Final Fantasy XII is, and even though I think, while it has the most nothing story of any Final Fantasy game, it's my favorite one to play by far. But I don't, like, I look at this card, and I think, like, this is partially informed by, like, my hunger to see something in, like, a white card that does something I'm not used to seeing. This does some cool stuff, but then I think, like, for 4 mana, you just get, like, Gideon. You know, obviously this is not just like a 4-drop play. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I want this to be good enough too. We'll have to talk about this a little bit more offline, but I don't know that it quite gets there. I think in order for this to get there in my unrestricted cube deck, and I'm just thinking out loud here, this isn't like a reason through, I'm just, babbling. I think I want to be in a deck that is aggressive enough that disrupting your ability to block my incoming flood of damage once with warp for cheap and then be able to take you off a blocker again later to finish you off. I think that's where I don't think I want this strikes me as a card in my unrestricted deck that I want to be like highly aggressive. Like I want the warp aspect of it to be meaningfully disruptive, and like I need that to matter. I think in Peasant, it's probably, like, the environment's probably slower enough that getting, like, value off your own stuff off the front half of the warp is probably like something really considerable in terms of its power level. For unrestricted, like I think I need this disruption to be part of my package that's killing you.
Sure. I mean, I read this mostly as like, do you want to blink? Like, I just don't think Banisher Priest is a very good card, and putting it at 4 mana is not gonna sway me very much. So it does come down to like, what are you getting off the warp? And I read it more value oriented than aggressive oriented. So I've got it in the peasant line, like firmly in peasant line, being a cool card. I don't think it gets there at a mainline power level, because just casting this for 4 mana is not a good enough card, I don't think.
And that's probably correct. I just, I'm so peasant pilled at this point that this card is just like, oh man.
It's very cool. Also, it's worth noting, like, I think the joke here is, in retail limited, you can warp another expensive thing and then warp this to blink out the other creature and keep that thing around permanently. So you're basically just like ephemerating a cheap warp card to get the full value creature into play permanently, which can do some pretty nasty stuff. So
yeah, I think if you're going to include this card in a more powerful environment, I think you have to hit the sort of golden mean of between what you're talking about, of like, you probably want like Toby, Beastie Befriender, and Blade Splicer in your deck. That way you can get value off this card, but also be proactive enough that when the blocker clearing comes up, you'd be interested. Probably doesn't get there on overall power, but I think if you can do both of those things some percentage of the time, that this card is considerable.
Two more white cards. I wanted to just very briefly touch on Seam Rip, which is a single white mana for an enchantment, an uncommon. When it enters, you exile a non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until Seam Rip leaves the battlefield. This is just Portable Hole. I think it's the exact same text on Portable Hole, except it's an enchantment instead of an artifact. So if you want a second Portable Hole, if you're looking for more like really cheap early game white interaction, or if you care more about enchantments than artifacts, or you need to like adjust permanent types, then this is a card that's available to you. There's not really too much else to say about it. You guys pointed out it does have some really cool art, but it is basically just Portable Hole number 2, so don't really want to spend too much time on that one. And then Teld, you had I guess our only spacecraft of the, I think it's the only spacecraft that came up on this review. The last card in white is a spacecraft.
Yeah, unless we want to make fun of the put 20 power worth of cards to get a card that dies to Doomblade. I don't want to do that. Yeah. So this is Lumen class frigate. It's 1 and a white for a artifact spacecraft. And when you station it for 2 other creatures you control, get +1/+1. And at 12, it becomes a flying life linking 3/5. So I just want to point out that this is literally a 2 mana anthem if you squint hard enough, and that's the only reason it is on this document.
Which doesn't strike me as that bad. You do have to tap a creature probably at some point. Like, obviously, otherwise this card does nothing. I don't know that you're ever. I don't know if you have just 10 powers worth of creatures to attack with, like, why would you ever station this? I don't know, but
yeah, I guess the idea is you could also do it over multiple turns, but that just still, I mean, like, I guess the payoff, the problem here is that if the payoff is a 3/5 lifelinker, the lifelink is really relevant when your opponent is beating you down and getting your life total low, but the reason they were able to so easily do that is because you kept tapping your creatures to funnel into this.
Yeah. So I'm just so off of, like, this card. I look at it and I read it and I'm like, you know what? There's probably something powerful here, but I'm just like so anti spacecraft right now.
Why does it need to be 12?
I guess because it pumps your creatures. So
I guess, but like, yeah.
Like, that's the idea, is it's going to be easier to station this, but why am I not attacking with those creatures?
I mean, like, honestly, man, for like something like this, like, what I would want to see is like just an artifact that, I mean, I understand spaceships, whatever, I'm talking about a completely different class of card, but when I see a card like this with like this type of cost, right, I don't want my like 2+ to be an anthem and then my 12+ be like, I get a 3/5 lifelinker that I guess, or no, it's still other creatures you control if you when it becomes a vehicle. Like, I want the 12 mode to be like all of your creatures get flying in lifelink. You know what I'm saying? Like, fuck the body. Like,
yeah.
This
is where I have to assume I'm the one who's wrong, right? Because once you start chipping that 12 down to like 10 or 8 or something, maybe it just becomes trivial to turn these things into creatures, and then you're just like literal battle cruiser smashing people with spacecraft. So I think they just played it safe, and that to us translates to not playable.
Yeah, I think like you have to just almost completely ignore the 12 plus to look at this card. Like you're literally is like, all right, are you okay with 2 mana, probably tap a creature to get an Anthem? Like that's kind of what you're reading into here. And I don't know the answer to that, but.
And then if you board stall, maybe you get to turn this into something.
You go like 2-drop, 3-drop, or like 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop into like this plus a 2, tap the 2, Anthem this, attack with your team. That's pretty good. I mean, it's like it's a very specific setup, but I think fitting this in later into your curve with another creature to immediately tap isn't something that is unreasonable to do. But I don't know if that's a good enough payoff as is, anyways.
I don't know. We'll probably report back on some space. I'm sure 1 or 2 spacecraft will overperform in limited, and we'll be like, okay, maybe we misevaluated this mechanic or something. Yeah. But I do not see it. I just don't see it for any of these cards when it comes to a high power level cube.
I'm with you, Tim. I've been doing this long enough to know that and you've said it several times now, which is this looks so poorly balanced to me that it leads me, like, my natural instinct is like, they must know something that I don't.
Yeah, because this seems I have to be wrong.
I have to be because this seems so obviously bad.
And this is how every spacecraft in the set is designed. Like, pretty much every single one of them.
And I think this is, like, pretty easily, at least on first grok, the best of the spacecrafts. Like, this is the only one that I was like, I can kind of see the vision here.
Yeah, so we'll report back, but for right now, like, we're not going to mention any other spacecraft, and that's a good litmus test of, like, where we're at on it. And if you guys know something that we don't, and we're just, like, completely wrong about this, like, please come join the Discord, the Jank Gaming Discord, and let us know about it. So the first blue card here is Batman's secret arch nemesis that people don't know about, the Quantum Riddler. 3 blue.
Quantum Riddler versus Mecha Batman.
3 blue for a 4/6 flying Sphinx at Mythic Rare. When it enters, draw a card. Okay, cantrip and 5-drop. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, if you would draw 1 or more cards, you draw that many, +1 instead. And the kicker here, it has a warp cost of 1 and a blue. So this kind of has cycling, right? This is basically just 1 and a blue cycle. It comes into play, you draw a card. If for some reason you're like down to 0 or 1 cards, it'll actually draw you 2 cards, but I'm assuming that's not happening if you're warping this on like turn 2 or 3.
And if you draw it in the point where you would be out of cards, you just cast it for 5 most of the time.
Yeah, you just cast it.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of the warp cards, they basically just cantrip or will place themselves with a card in some way, and that makes them very similar to cyclers that don't lose you the card. It's not like cycle this or cast it. It's cycle it and then cast it later, so a lot like an adventure. So you get to kind of cantrip this early on, and then in the late game, a 4/6 flyer, I mean, that cantrip, like, it replaces itself on ETB. A 4/6 flyer is a pretty gnarly stat line. That's pretty big.
Yeah. I mean, it combos with cards like Kitza and Malcolm as well, because like those cards don't actually generate card advantage. They just sculpt your hand to make it as good as possible. And so if you get to the point where you've played out your hand, you start drawing with them, you could do this immediately, right? You could like either warp this in or like play it as a 5-drop and hit with a Malcolm, draw a bunch of cards. You know, obviously that's like, we're talking about like getting into synergy territory there, but I just think the overall package here, if you just read this as like source, if this was like an adventure that was 1 in a blue that exiled a 5-mana 4/6 that also draws a card, I think I'd be down for that. I think the layers of upside here are also such that just like, this is just a good card. I think this fits into like what we've been pushing. And part of the reason why I think we talk about like white not being able to keep up, and I actually think it's cards like this. So like if you look, there's like this, Meringue River Regent, there's Horned Lock Whale. Blue is getting all of these cards that have these cheap buyout modes or like relatively efficient buyout modes, but also have great late game value. And white just seems to have to choose between one or the other pretty consistently. And I think that's the difference between like the best colors in our cube at the moment and the worst colors, is the really good colors get to do these like cheap things to spend your mana early, but also scale into the late game. Like that way you're not just completely out when your opponent kills your first, 2 to 3 creatures that you play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're not even buyout modes, right? Like, because you get to do both.
Oh, sure. In this case, yeah, it's not. I guess with like the Lock Whale in this is not even buyout. With Meringue, it is a buyout.
I get your point. Yeah, well, the funny thing about Meringue though too is like it's that is a buyout mode, but in a weird way, it also kind of isn't, because it like thins your deck out and gets you like closer to just drawing the other side of it. But anyway, you're right. Blue keeps getting these, and it's like we've seen enough of these now for me to like look at an effect like this that on its face is like pretty mediocre for the mana if you just consider it as like the one card, and then you tack on like a cheap thing to do that's like not like exactly what you want for that mana, but it's basically free to like know that this is probably good. We have multiple cards in blue that care about how many cards you've drawn this turn, so like, you know, there's going to be times that you know, play your Mystic on turn 2, the flyer that makes flyers when you draw extra cards, and then like the next turn you either like hold up some kind of like 1 mana interaction after like drawing an extra card with this, or like this gives you ways to trigger things. I think that this is overall pretty solid. I could also, I don't know if you're always like, I don't know how often you would do this, but I could see a situation where if I was like behind enough and I had like 5 mana and I top decked this like on an empty hand, I could see a situation where instead of just like playing it out and just like praying they don't have a like a Doom Blade, I could see a situation where you warp this to draw 2 cards to like hope that you get like a piece of interaction and a blocker, or like a Doom Blade and a counter spell or whatever. Like this can give you ways to play 2 outs where just like slamming it. These are edge cases that I'm thinking about here, but I think that 1 in a blue is it's a shitty cantrip, but it's a free cantrip, and it's also cheap enough to weave into blue's curve in other ways. Because again, with like the thing partially too with blue is like when you evaluate the expense of this cantrip, if you can play an overpriced cantrip, but you can also represent interaction on the next turn, then the fact that it's overcosted doesn't like punish you as much as playing like a sorcery speed effect of its kind in like a different color, if that makes any sense. So I think that there's just enough edges to this. I think that this is worth testing. This just kind of like, I like your call out to Lockwell there, Teld. They're starting to feel like a certain kind of like a blue pedigree of these sort of effects now that like look a little bit dorky, but like you've just seen this like combined card advantage-y large creature in the back end package enough to know at this point that it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, and one other thing to mention is that 6 is the new 5, and so this is officially dummy thick, I believe is how the kids say it.
Yeah. Do you guys remember Cavalier of Gales? This is just better than
blue, baby.
I think. Yeah.
Quick note, first off, I posted the alternate art. Have you seen this insane, ridiculous alternate art for this card?
What's up with the
wow, this
what's
is
up,
wild.
What's up with the Pride Month skull? What are we looking
I
at
don't.
here?
There's the skull over in the corner. It's like it turned from a sphinx into like a mecha slime. It's crazy. Go look up this art
like
by
an eyeball in its mouth or something.
Cacho Rubion. I don't know. It's like
Cacho,
what in the world?
Cacho likes LSD. I do like it. I do like this. I'm not clowning on it. It's insane. But I do like it.
Yeah, super cool. Other thing I wanted to mention here, first off, up the beanstalk, if you care about, if you have anything that cares about high power or high mana values, these warp costs can kind of play into that. But also for R-Cube, slip out the back, baby. You can warp this in and then slip out the back and keep it around. And
sure, yeah.
That's a 3 mana play, but you get a 5/7 flyer out of the deal. Nice. So slip out the back, stay winning. Other blue card that I think is actually just very good from the set here. So Consult the Star Charts is 1 in a blue card for a rare instant. I'm glad you do. I think this card is actually quite powerful after, evaluating it a couple times. It's got a kicker cost of 1 in a blue, which would put it at 4 mana. The effect is look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you control. Put 1 of the cards into your hand. If the spell was kicked, put 2 of those cards into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom in a random order. So you're starting off as like really bad impulse if you just cast this on 2. Obviously it's a better impulse as the game goes on, because it'll let you look at more cards if you have more lands in play. And then obviously once you get to 4 mana and above, it's going to be, minimum 4 mana, look at the top 4, put 2 in your hand, and then scales up from there to the point where it's getting to like dig through time territory. But I'll let you speak to the power level of the card, Chris, but I just wanted to use this as a jumping off point to say that the blue card draw has gotten like very juiced lately between 3 steps ahead has a kicker mode or a spree mode on it that does some rummaging on top of countering a spell. And we have stock up now. Memories Returnin', I think, is a powerful draw spell that didn't make the cut because stock up exists. And now we've got this as well. So someone out there is trying to give blue card draw like a huge bump, and they are doing a very good job of it.
Yeah, I also love this card. I agree with Tim. One of the things that I have been enthusiastic about in terms of blue design in the last little while here is we were talking about how instead of just like my attitude was like, oh, well, they just need to start printing like Counterspell and Mana Leak again. And instead of what they sort of started to do is they were like, well, we're going to print more expensive Counterspells than that, but we're going to give you enough value or juice or like interesting shades that it's actually going to be worth it. Like they managed to find that. And for a while, we've been like, blue just needs 2 mana, draw 2 cards. And don't get me wrong, I would not stub my nose at that. But one thing that's been impressive to me about some of the blue counterspells they've been printing, and now some of this blue card draw, is they're printing cards that have these this is a very basic card selection, card draw style effect, right? That's all that this is. All this is doing is looking at cards and putting cards into your hand. It's not adding like new, fresh spin on the effect itself or anything. But what's cool is they're finding ways to like reference these different modalities of card draw that they've been exploring for the last couple of years in like these new packages that feel like distinct cards, but are also in terms of their effect like totally referenceable to other effects. Mm-hmm. And what I really really like about this card, it's instant, which is phenomenal, right? We've played Impulse. Impulse was a cube classic for a really long time. Turns out like 2 mana, look at the top 4, put 1 into your hand, not a particularly good standalone card, right? It was basically always getting cut from blue decks. It's like, well, what's my 24th card? Okay, I'm going to cut Impulse. This is at some points in the game is going to be an instant speed version of that alchemy card that searches the top half of your library, depending on how deep into the game you are. Yeah. Occasionally, like the later you draw this, the better it is, because the higher percentage of your deck it's going to scan, the more likely that if you haven't drawn the thing that was going to win you the game already, it's already in your deck. The probability you're going to find it is getting progressively higher. If you kick this on 4 lands, it's the first half of Memory Deluge, right? Which isn't terrible. The 2 mana mode ideally is going to be better than Impulse, right? Like, I mean, even if you have this in your opening hand, like ideally, like you're not firing this off until quite late, right? This is kind of like what you're using to dig late. And then in some scenarios, when it's late in the game, you're going to have 7 mana, you're going to have 18 cards left in your library, and you're basically just going to be able to like dig your entire goddamn deck and still have 3 mana up for the counter spell that you drew and the thing you're going to kill your opponent with. There's so much flexibility in this package. And then because I'm kind of monologuing just because I really like this design. It might just be because it's more complex that I like it better. I think that this is probably on average, and this is not a knock against the card, Deduce. I think this is for my money, this might be more powerful than Deduce is, and Deduce is good. I think that this is almost certainly better than Memory Deluge is. Yes. I think this is great. I think it's a great card.
I think the difference with Deduce is Deduce has synergies with Mischievous Mystic and Thopter Fabricator that are particularly powerful. I just want to throw that out there. I do agree with you. It's probably better on average. I will say also Deduce letting you fire it off on 2 with no repercussions, right? Because this you kind of want to hold it for 4. I like that Deduce you can kind of bank the draw for later. In any case, this is definitely competing with all of the top tier blue card draw. And I think one of the reasons we see blue becoming the most popular color we draft, and I just mentioned on the last card, one of those reasons is kind of these modal buyout, like value cheap cards with big things to do later. I think this is part of the other reason is that blue card draw used to be one of the things that would happen. And I've joked about, I have a Twitch clip somewhere where I'm just laughing because like my opponent kills the first 3 or 4 creatures I play and then bricks on 3 lands in a row or something like that. And it used to be that the card draw in blue was such that like you would do that pretty frequently. And now when you get to the mid to late game in your blue decks, or these cards not only reduce the number of non-games because it's like cheap to, cycle it early if you want to, but when you get to the late game, you just no longer don't find your finisher. You never don't find the Quintorius or the Scarab God or the Kefka or whatever it is you're looking to win the game. You always end up finding the counterspell to lock out the game. Like your closing power in blue card draw as of late has just gotten so much more consistent and powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our players really gravitate towards it, mostly because of the non-game thing. This is kind of a thing I've been drafting these like white game object decks in Peasant, even when I draft Boros. And the reason for that is like I just don't like playing linear aggro because it feels like you lose agency of the game, even if it's it could be the best best deck in your cube, but there's an agency feeling that you kind of lose that you don't feel that way when you play these like blue control-y mid-range piles. And I think our players gravitate towards that. And then like these kind of cards just ensure that you're never gonna like break at some point. Like if there's outs in your deck, you almost guarantee get to find them at some point.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't literally draw cards, and that's always a downside when you're playing stuff like Mischievous Mystic. But like I'm usually fine with that if you're just getting like this amount of raw card advantage off of something.
I actually like the art too. It's like there's nothing special going on in it. I just really like the sense of perspective that it has. I'm really digging it.
Yeah, we're charting a space course. I'm also ready for this card to just have an absurd top player game in hand win rate, the retail set. This feels like the kind of card that when your really good players play it is probably just going to completely
know when to fire it off for two and stuff like that. Yeah. Teld, we got one more blue card here that I would bet money you were the one who added this to the list.
You would be correct. So this is Disculpting Blast. It's 1 in a blue. Man, I told you, I've been peasant pilled lately. It's an instant and uncommon, and you return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If it was attacking, you make a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying, and this creature can only block creatures with flying. So again, if we're kind of squinting, this is a 1/1 mana war of sorts. You've got the flexibility of being able to fire this off at sorcery speed, but when your opponent's just attacking you, you can bounce their dudes, you get a little Dorko, and given the proliferation of cards like Muyan Ling and Enduring Curiosity and that sort of thing, blue has had a lot of extra value in getting a little dorky attacker to be able to pair with cards like that. I don't think this is a world beater by any means, but it is something to consider. It's not even a card I'm necessarily going to say we should definitely play. But when you bounce a random attacking creature, it's going to feel pretty good. And then usually these sort of like bounce any permanent effects have some sort of value that you can get even if it's out of the sideboard to like buy yourself some time.
Teld is acting so hard like he's not using this on his own attacking creature and making it a core Skyfisher. This is just a core Skyfisher in disguise.
He knows me too well.
Oh my god, dude! Oh shit! You can do that post damage too, right? So you can
hit him. Yep.
Yeah.
I see what's going on here. Cool card. I also agree. Like you only have so much room for like unsummony type stuff, and I'm not sure if it gets there for the Baneline Cube. We'll almost certainly talk about this for the Peasant Cube, where I think it absolutely gets there. And it's a sweet little design. I'm not sure exactly where it lands on power level, but I see the potential power here. Black has the funny thing about this first black card is I think we all collectively willed it into existence. So the card is a Umbral Caller Zealot, which is 1 in a black for a 3/2 uncommon human cleric, and it has an open-ended sack outlet ability. No mana cost, no tap in. Sack another creature or artifact, surveil 1. And the funny thing about this is like maybe 2 or 3 days before they revealed this card, me, Chris, and Teld were all just kind of chatting a little bit, and we were like, what if they made like a Viscera Seer that like surveilled instead of scryed or something like that? Like I don't remember the exact conversation, but it was something like,
it was like, what if it surveilled instead of scryed? Well, the stat line would be too bad. What if like it cost a little more and it had more stats?
And it was like, and then they were like, oh, here's Umbral Caller. So basically the FBI agent is now on our phone line as well.
Yeah.
So
this card's perfect. Ship it. Like this is 10 out of 10. Perfect design.
Beautiful card. Stacks artifacts too. I like that a lot of the aristocratic stuff is starting to touch artifacts as well. It feels like a natural expansion. Yeah,
they've been doing that for a little while now, and I think it was a really, really good design choice in terms of cross-pollinating, like what designs can be good for. I can't remember when exactly they started to do that, but creature or artifact has been a type, like a framing that we've seen like a lot recently, and it really creates more space, especially for these these uncommon cards, right? Yeah. The creature or artifact on these uncommon cards, like it really expands the range of cubes and situations that they could conceivably be interesting in, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this card could have very easily have been a 2/2, and I would have not blinked, that it would have made sense that it was a 2/2. It could have had
or
blitz per
scry
turn.
one.
Scry.
Yeah,
There are any number of things, and this is like one of those rare cases where at an uncommon, they kind of just turned all the knobs up and like gave us everything we would ever want on like a actual cube playable card at a moderate power level or a high power level, I guess.
Yeah,
and still not like an A+. I mean, it's
no. It's just it's a fine. It's a 2-drop.
It's just the design we need. It's a design that we wanted for our cube for a while. That it just this is like actually the card we wanted to get designed. It's perfect.
Yes, Chris, another 2-drop here. I think I remember you saying you were interested in this card.
Yeah, so I don't think like I as much as I love mono black cards, I don't think I could sell anybody on playing 2-drops that are black. This card is Timeline Color. It is black for a 2/2 with haste, and you may cast this card from your graveyard using its warp ability, which is what you may ask. Warp 1 black, pay 2 life. So basically, it's a 2/2 haster. That you can pay a black and 2 life to warp from your hand or your graveyard and put it back onto the battlefield and swing for 2 damage again. Bloodghast is the classic. Notoriously, you don't have to pay a dime to bring it back, but you can't always bring it back when you want to. You don't always draw back lands. Obviously, Bloodghast in conjunction with fetches is really, really strong. I think that this is a different card. I think this is a card you could also talk about in that slot, though. One of the things that I like about this is if I'm in my opening hand in an aggressive black deck, if my opener doesn't have a 1-drop, but it does have this card and a good curve after that, I can do something on turn 1 and trade 2 of my life for 2 of yours, which as an aggressive deck I'm going to be looking to be doing anyway. Get in with this on turn 2 conceivably, or trade it, and then it's just available for 1 mana for me to chuck it at you every turn for the remainder of the game as long as my life total is ahead of yours. I think that this is a solid pressure card.
This is Reinforced Ronin. That's why Chris likes it. I was thinking about just from the graveyard. I missed that we're Reinforced Ronin-ing them.
You can Ronin them, yeah, you can do that if you have nothing else to do.
One thing to note, and I think it makes the card maybe slightly better, is if you cast it from the graveyard for its warp cost, it will then exile itself at the end of that turn, and then you have to cast it from exile for black the following turn. So you can't pay black and pay 2 life every turn. It's pay black and 2 life this turn, then next turn play black to cast it from exile. So it's going to modulate how much mana you have to pay each time you cast it, but sometimes you won't have the life payment on it.
Right. I think this is a cool aggro card. I wouldn't advocate for playing this and Bloodghast in the same section in a 360. I just don't think most people have room for 2 mono black aggressive cards. But I think if you have a heavily black aggressive deck, I think this is certainly interesting. I think that this is kind of... I mean, it's a different card, but like it has underdog vibes. Yeah, if you remember that card.
This is a cool combo card, but I think for terms of fair Magic, I don't know how much you would have to pay me to put a black 2-power creature into my deck, because I'm not putting a Bloodghast in my deck either. So I'm not. Maybe I'm not the person to ask.
No, you are. You are absolutely. You are never the right person. You are never the right person to ask. Because Teld will look at my Bloodghast deck and be like, "Oh, you did it again. You're gonna bomb out," and then I go 2-1. So you are not the right person to ask.
Yeah, I just am not gonna draft the kind of decks that these cards go in. But yeah, I just think the most interesting thing about this card is that there's probably more if I stopped and thought about it. But because this warp ability activates from the graveyard, like you get some Blood Artists, you get a Sack Owl that makes some mana, you have a good time. But yeah, that's Yeah, I think it's an actual card. I think it's pretty mediocre, but like it's.
Wake up, honey! New Bloodghast just dropped. I do think if you are specifically looking to do sacrifice synergy things, and you have fetch lands in your cube, I think it's going to be really hard to displace Bloodghast. But I think if you have a black aggressive deck and Bloodghast is serviceable in those decks, I think that this is something you could try just to mix it up, and it is almost certainly going to cost like 4 cents. So.
Yeah. It's an uncommon, if that wasn't mentioned, so not a big.
I would like to talk about this next one if I can as well, because this is the absolute. This is like the kind of sci-fi art my brother and I have like always loved.
Yeah.
This card is Elegy Acolyte, and I'm also I get excited when I see a black 4-drop that I think is playable because they don't print a whole lot of them that aren't too busted to play. It is 2 black for a human cleric, not looking real human to be honest with you. But Human Cleric, it is a 4/4 with lifelink. Whenever one or more players, or whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card and you lose 1 life, so it has like the Gix effect, but it's gated to only 1 card per turn. And then it has Void at the beginning of your end step. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So it pays you for flinging stuff at your opponent. You can trade off some material or even like have some material get eaten because you're going to draw cards by going around it. And then if you did, in fact, basically feed something into the wood chipper to get the stuff around it in and draw a card, you're also going to make a 2/2. And then every time you lob in that 2/2, it's just going to make your 2/2. Even if
I missed that this is not non-token. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah,
yep.
so your 2/2s just sell. You could just you could use your sack outlet from like 3 cards up to sack, surveil, and then make another 2/2. That's cool.
Yes, yeah. So it's a large-ish body that'll stabilize on board. Like if you're playing like a sacrificey black aggressive deck and you're getting your shit kicked in by another fast deck, because that you don't tend, as a black sacrificey cheap shitty black creature deck, you don't tend to play into other aggressive decks very well at all. Because you are aggressive, but you are not as fast, right? And you're trading speed for grind capacity into like mid-range or controlling decks. It's generally the positioning of your black aggressive deck versus like a good red deck. A red deck will be faster. A good red deck will also generally cut a good black deck apart if it's an aggro head-to-head, just because all of red's cheap burn also doubles as effective removal spells. I think a 4/4 lifelinker plays pretty well into that matchup, and it is non-token, so you can just create an absolute stream of stuff. I mean, it's gated behind your end step and a bunch of other stuff to make it not super-duper busto, but I just think that this is a pretty solid overall package. Tim, I see your comment here about, so we Kalitas is a card that's good enough, but we don't play because basically what it does against aggressive decks is it's a large lifelinker, and it also turns all of your removal spells into your opponent loses the game. This has some of the same concerns being like a large lifelinker, but it doesn't. Kalitas is like a pure aggro shutdown card because of the way that it interacts with removal, and I think that this has much more of like a proactive plan associated with it.
Kalitas also tends to be a brick against control and mid-range decks, and this is like you can still draw cards.
Card advantage.
I think this is a much more well-rounded card, and I think the ceiling against aggro is definitely worse, because against your aggro deck, I think it might be hard to actually cast this, especially casting it on curve and getting a 2/2 the turn you play it, which is kind of the dream there. Obviously, if you untap with it, you can get some stuff, but there's a ceiling on how many 2/2s you're getting in any given turn cycle, which is 1. And you have to do it on your turn, so we're not making like combat blocks a complete nightmare. Like obviously they have to get through the 4/4 lifelinker, but it costs you 4 mana, so like an obliterating bolt or any number of the deal 5s will help you push through this. I think this card is good, and it's probably super annoying when you don't have the answer to it, which against black, sometimes that's going to be the case because they'll hit your hand with, Thoughtseize and Deep Cavern Bats and Hostile Investigators and stuff. But I think in terms of being very polarizing, that this isn't nearly as bad, even though it's probably a better card than Kalitas.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like a perfect black 5-drop or 4-drop for us. Like we've been talking a little bit about the state of black 4-drops, and this card does have a very high ceiling, but is also answerable in a lot of situations. It doesn't become gigantic like Kalitas can. The lifelink on these giant kind of like mid-range bodies always does make me a little bit weary, but a 4/4 for 4 is like a manageable card. I did want to point out again that Void will trigger if you kill your opponent's stuff, so like you don't even have necessarily like you probably shouldn't expect to get the 2/2 the first turn this comes into play unless you're doing aristocrat stuff or an opponent trades a creature in combat. You're like black aggro.
Right. If you're just like a deck that's like I'm swinging every turn no matter unless it's like egregious for me to do it.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. But this has some play in like a more controlling deck that
it does.
You're not necessarily trying to kill your own permanents. You're trying to kill your opponent's permanents, and that's good enough to get. I mean, if you get one robot off this is an incredible card.
It's just a good card. Yeah.
Yeah, with the draw trigger on top of that, like any individual part of this, if this just made tokens and didn't have the draw trigger, I'd still think it's a pretty powerful card, but it has that draw as well. So this can do some pretty gnarly things. I think this is like the perfect kind of mid-rangey black slop that I'm looking for in a 4-drop.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, because I think this, like you were just outlining, this will play in your mid-range deck as well, right? It's big lifelinker, makes dudes when you kill your opponent's dudes. If you're playing red-black whipsaw removal, and you resolve this, you keep it on board. If you remove the bigger blockers, even if this is the only thing you're attacking with, if it gets in for damage, it draws. and gains you a shitload of life.
And we don't play a lot of cards that do this, but if you can like treasure token on 2 into this on 3, the treasure token is enough to trigger Void, and being able to do that into 3 is like pretty nuts.
Also, when Chris warps his guy out of the graveyard, he's gonna get the trigger off that because
it counts warp. It does count warp.
I mean, notably, this is also just good with like all the other black cards that just make tokens, right? I mean, obviously, like it's good with Jadar, has become like the new good with Luris, but I mean, it just makes your Jadar tokens basically come back as permanent creatures after they die.
This with Ophomancer also, like
Ophomancer, yeah, Rat King.
Like usually use that card defensively, but I mean specifically with Ophomancer because the snake has Death Touch, and so like usually it's just chip in for 1 damage. But now you get to draw a card off of it, which makes the the analysis of do you block the snake or not a lot more complicated. And it gets even better if you have the 2 mana 3/2 on turn 1, because then you can like sack the snake after combat and get your trigger. But that's obviously Magic Christmas Land where we've assembled our Rube Goldberg engine. But it does give you those options while just being totally playable on it.
This seems like one of the stronger cards in the set to me.
This is a slam. Yep.
Who added Zuifi? They really like that. Someone learned the word osteo at Magic the Gathering headquarters, and they're like, let's slap that on every card.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Zuafit Osteo Harmonist. It's 1 black for a legendary human wizard at rare. It's a 2/3, and it says tap, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a skeleton in addition to its other types and has no abilities. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay, 2 things. One, I missed that it does not have abilities. I did miss that.
I also did.
That would be insane.
It would be insane. Yeah.
Which is actually why I had it on here. Is like I was like, this doesn't. The real reason I put it on here is I was very surprised that this didn't have finality counters as part of the deal, which is usually what they've been putting on these cards. Not getting abilities makes a lot of sense as to why that is. That being said, I don't think this card is good. I just wanted to point it out because it seems super annoying, and it reminds me of. You guys remember that demon card that I really liked out of Foundations? That was like when a card goes to great. It's
written
kind of
there in the comps. It's right there.
Oh, Abyssal Harvester. Yeah, that's the name of the card. This is kind of in that vibe where it's just like, this seems super annoying if you ever get it to go. Like, you're not going to untap with this often, but it is super obnoxious.
This card is both not very good and also a total pain in the ass, right? Because like if you don't removal check it immediately, which it does die to every removal spell, so you are going to removal check it. But if you don't do that, it just puts stats on board over and over, and no finality counter means you can just block with the dude, sack the dude, and just bring it right back into play. Like it doesn't exile.
You can go, you play an intruder alarm, and then you play this guy with a sack outlet. And we go infinite.
Yes. We broke intruder alarm, which is on the arena client, by the way. But I mean, like, just imagine like I have this sitting on board. I play Croxa from my hand, and then I'm like, okay, I'll just put a 6/6 into play. Like, whatever. It doesn't have any abilities, but I don't care. I'm just going to put a 6/6 into play by tapping a creature. No mana cost. If you deal with my 6/6, whatever, I'm just going to tap this and put a 6/6 back into play again. Like, this seems like a total, like, feast or famine card where I either kill it right away and it feels bad, or I don't kill it and it's like, I'm just going to put, like, 12 power into play over the next couple turns. It doesn't have any abilities, but I'm just going to put power into play, whatever. And they're spooky, scary skeletons, but... like, whatever. Where's the finality counter? Why does this not put finality counters?
Well, also, it does not put the thing into play tapped, right? So it's basically just like if you have a larger creature in the graveyard, it's an infinite source of a larger blocker that you can
just put bodies on board and put stats on board.
This card just made me raise an eyebrow. I don't think it's good. I don't want to play it. Just wanted to mention it because there's always one of these cards floating around in these sets where you're just like, what were they smoking?
Yeah, it's probably not even as good as Abyssal Harvester. There's a timing restriction on that card, but it does just reanimate creatures straight up. This is more like it's almost like creating tokens.
Kind of,
you know, tap to create a 4/4 token or a 3/3 token or whatever based on what's in your graveyard. And then obviously there's like, if I can blink the creature I got back, it comes back as the real thing. And
I got you. We're going to turn 3 cast this on, and then on the next turn we channel or cycle our what's the 8/8? Oh, that too. I was going to say the 8/8 dinosaur.
Oh, the dino. Yeah, and then it's like, okay, I'll just put 8/8 power into play. This card seems annoying. Like, it's weak enough to not play, but strong enough to be annoying if you do play it.
This card's going to be a super obnoxious card in the limited format. Like,
it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a skeleton. Anyway.
His powers have gotten so strong. It is my favorite art in the set. It is a shame that I don't like the text box.
So 2 more black cards. Tragic Trajectory. I actually added this to the list because I just assumed it was an instant, and then I was like, it's probably worth talking about still.
Oh yeah, no, it's different. No, it's okay. Never mind. I was like, if it was an instant, isn't it basically just Fatal Push? But no, it's different than Fatal Push.
It would be better. It would be strictly better Disfigure.
Yeah, yes. Which is what I was reading was strictly better Disfigure, but it's different enough. So Tragic Trajectory is a black mana for an uncommon sorcery. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and then the Void ability is that creature gets -10/-10 until end of turn if a non-land permanent or you warped a spell or whatever. So this is more comparable to Grimbauble, which is the artifact that gives -2/-2 and you can sack it later on to Surveil, than it is to like Disfigure or Fatal Push. And you can obviously, the name Tragic Trajectory, they're going for the tragic slip pun there or whatever. But as a sorcery, I'm kind of like out unless you're trying to play less instant speed interaction, because I do think this is just worse than, Fatal Push, worse than Disfigure and stuff like that. But I don't know, 1 mana spell that can sometimes pop your opponent's biggest creature is not something to ignore either. So maybe this is like for Constructed, this is supposed to be the card that replaces like Cut Down, because that's rotating in a couple months. But for Cube, I'm kind of back and forth on whether like this is really worth it or not. I kind of like what Grimbauble represents as a permanent. So something that can trigger Void later on, for example. So I think you get a little bit more mileage out of that being a permanent than I mean, maybe that's not even true. Maybe just the upside of being able to kill your opponent's like Railway Brawler or something with your 1 mana removal spell is probably not something to dismiss here.
Dismiss costs 4 mana, so yeah.
Thank you, Teld. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this. It feels like it lines up with a lot of black removal without being like some must-play black removal spell.
Yeah, it seems fine. This is kind of a side-grade territory to Grimbauble. I do like Grimbauble as well. I think it obviously plays better at Peasant. This probably, if I'm being totally honest, it probably plays better than Grimbauble in our power level of environment, just because the upside of, kill giant thing is relevant. There are more 8/8 dinosaurs floating around these days, and 10/10s from Railway Brawler and stuff like that. So I think that's a pretty meaningful upside. That it's probably better at Peasant. I have no interest in this, but we'll talk about that then.
Yeah, I could see this for unrestricted. Like Grimbauble's cool. The buyout is cool, but especially with some of what our cheap black decks are doing, this being kind of like different Fatal Push is probably just better.
I like that you can combine this in some of the low. I think this is good better in some of the lower tier decks in our environment potentially, where something like Black White, for example, like you could play this combined with like a Rite of Oblivion to just kill your opponent's 2 best cards in a single turn cycle. Whereas I think something like Blue Black that tends to play very much at instant speed is going to have a lot harder time really leveraging this, and so that could be a consideration as well. Like you might still play this in Blue Black, but I think just if I'm
this is for the black decks. This is for the black decks that you don't like. Yeah. This is a Mardu black card. This is I think a card that you think about in a similar way to like not a Tragic Slip, like a Bone Shards almost.
Yeah. One thing me and Tim have been talking about at Peasant is including more cards that are in that vein of like, how do we support a specific kind of game plan so that they can get removal spells that maybe they're more interested in than the rest. So like we were doing that with Rabid Gnaw as like a Gruul card, right? Where your creature decks want it. And that could be something we look at too in the main line where, there's a lot of black removal gets poached, but maybe if you're the black sack deck, you can get this a little later, because the other black decks that are a little more, instant speed heavy aren't as interested in this.
I also like that the title and sort of the art is a callback to Tragic Slip.
Almost on the nose without being too hokey. I like those references.
I think for the unrestricted cube, I'm probably on trying this over Grimbauble, even though like Bauble is cool, just because to Teld's point, we've cut down to some extent on the black removal options available, and tuning a couple of them closer to what like the less popular black decks are doing is probably for the best, so they can get access to stuff that works for them even when the Doomblades are like really contested, which I think they currently sort of are, since we've trimmed back a little bit on how many of them are floating around.
Green's still smashing too, so more answers to your Titan of Industries and stuff is probably not a bad thing either.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, this will solve problems that Fatal Push will not.
Yep. Who wants to take this? This is a really cool design, by the way, this last black card.
Weirdly, I'm not that interested in it, but it is cool.
Yeah, I don't know how powerful it is, but like reading it, I'm like, there's so many little knobs and things you can do with it. I thought it was an interesting take on like what's ostensibly just like Phyrexian Arena. But
yeah, well, this strikes me as a potentially very powerful card. I just not for our cube. Requiem Monolith is 2 and a black for an artifact that taps until end of turn. Target creature gains. Whenever this creature is dealt damage, you draw that many cards and lose that much life. That creature's controller may have this artifact deal 1 damage to it, activate only as a sorcery. So this, for one, you can just like ping a creature to draw a card, right? So it's basically just Phyrexian Arena at that point, right? But where this is really going to get out of hand is when you're, getting into combat, your opponent is choosing blocks, and then like your 3 toughness creature that's trading for their thing that does 4 damage, like all of a sudden, like that exchange.
Sorcery only, so you have to telegraph.
Oh, you have to choose.
They also choose. They also choose. So after you run your 3 power creature into their 4 toughness guy, they just decline.
Well, you target your own creature and then you attack, and it's like if they block, I'm going to draw cards equal to.
I thought you were talking about like trying to kill their guy. My bad.
No. Well, then I misread this card because I completely glossed over the sorcery bit. I don't like this at all. You guys can talk about it.
Yeah, I also misread part of it. I was thinking that one of the knobs here is that you could just ping off 1 toughness creatures that your opponents control, but they can just decline to have the damage dealt to their creature. I thought it was like ping a creature, but they're going to draw a card, and you can't actually do that either. So this is really just pinging your own stuff, just pinging something that's not going to die to 1 damage to draw a card, so Phyrexian Arena, or I'm going to ping my, 4/4 and attack you with it because you only have a 5/5 that can block it, so you can eat my guy and I'll lose a bunch of life, but I'm going to draw a bunch of cards or something. So taking the ping and 1 toughness creatures off the table from the opponent, I think is a big knock against what I liked about this card, but I still think it's a very cool design. I don't think this is the type of card you would ever make room for to play.
Yeah. There is some play with the lose life thing too, because the effect they can decline the ping, but what they can't decline is the whenever dealt damage you draw that many cards and lose that much life. So like you could, if you have Magic Christmas Land scenario, you got like a 4/4 or a 5/5, and your opponent has like a 2/2 blocker or something, or a 1/1 blocker or something like that. Yeah, you could like present that where now like I'm gonna get rid of your blocker because you're just taking a bunch of damage anyways.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here. It's a very neat design. I don't think any, unless I'm wrong, Teld, I don't think any of us would advocate for like cutting a card that we know is like decent in our cube to like.
Oh no, this was just a cool design.
Yeah, very very cool, very cool. So moving into red, and Teld, I'm gonna let you take the entirety of red because I added literally 0 red cards to this document, and it looks like you added 4, starting off with one of the weird, I don't know, maybe one of the safest cards I think I've ever seen in my life, but man, I love Raymond Swanlin's art in Magic the Gathering. This card has just some sick art.
This art has aura.
This take on a dragon where it's like clearly supposed to be sort of like melding with like some element of a galaxy, like this kind of gaseous. It's beautiful. It's incredible. Yeah. This is one of the coolest depictions of a dragon I think I have ever seen. And as a nerd, I've seen a lot of dragon art.
Yeah, normally I think dragon art is a little. It's not really my vibe, but this is definitely cool. It's a very very sick art. It's Nova Hellkite, so it's 3 red for a rare dragon. And it has flying and haste, and whenever it enters, it deals 1 damage to target creature an opponent controls. It has warp for 2 and a red. So
it's a 4/5. It's a 4/5.
Oh yeah, it's a 4/5. So there's a couple of things going on with this card that I actually missed on my first read. I was like, why does this deal 1 instead of 2? That
1 damage. Really... 1 damage. This is like the safest glory, like the biggest glory bringer apology I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, so you warp it for 3. It deals 1 damage to an opponent's creature. That may or may not be relevant. Just depends on the board state. However, what I initially did miss is that when you warp it there, you can also use the haste to just turn your creature sideways and smack them in the face for 4, which if we're talking about like 4 mana, deal 4 to your opponent, deal 1 to one of their creatures, and then draw a hasty 4/5. Like that's not actually terrible. I don't know how good that is, but that's not terrible. And then on the other side, obviously it's a 5-mana 4/5. So this is sort of in the vein of those blue cards with like kind of good buyouts, except it's pushing damage to the face and then giving you more damage to the face later. I don't think you're going to want to turn 3 this necessarily, but like I could see spots where we want to warp this on 5 and then like play a 2-drop and ship with this to recast it next turn, for example. Obviously, if you can kill something with the warp, it gets a lot more exciting there. But I think there's a lot of flexibility here. I get a part of me wishes it cost 1 in a red. I think that would probably be a little egregious because then we're looking at like Playful Shove that draws you a 4/5, which maybe that would just be okay. But I like the total package here, surprisingly, after we kind of talked about, getting the 4 damage on the initial warp. I don't know if it's actually that good, but this does feel like the kind of card that, again, gives you a little bit of late game, like kind of grind while also pushing damage in your really fast draws.
I think like with a lot of the cards that have warp, I can see like you almost certainly want to get some value out of the warp before you end up recasting it. Not that you have to, but that there's like an obvious sort of like through line here. The way that I read the warp on this card is that it is like, it's nice that it's on there, but when you warp it, it's going to be a little bit more situational, right? Because like I'm not skipping playing a 3-drop to like warp this, right? I'm just not going to do that. So this one's tough for me to evaluate. It used to be that this was just like convention, that this card will like never be overturned, and it's just like been enough years now that I feel like they're going to have to do it eventually. But this does still feel like, to me, like Glorybringer is probably still better.
Almost certainly. I mean, if this snipes if you can warp this and snipe a 1 toughness creature, it's excellent, right?
Malcolm in Shambles.
Malcolm, Elite Spellbinder. I don't remember what card it was from the last review where I was like, oh, there's not actually a bunch of 1 toughness creatures, and then Teld looked it up and it's like, there actually are kind of a bunch of 1 toughness creatures.
You know what card this isn't is what is the name of it? The 5/5 that deals 1 to all your opponent's flyers, that's like a million years old. Thundermaw? Thundermaw?
Yeah, Thundermaw Hellkite. Yeah. I mean, this picks off like a Linger and Souls token or something.
Blood Artist,
it's still kind of like, was that good? I don't know. It hit for 4. I don't know. It feels like 1 damage is like so minimal that like they must have had something in mind. This feels like
really conservative.
It feels targeted at something specific, and I don't know what that is. But also,
like,
if this shocked,
insane, right? Like...
yeah, this needs to deal 1.5 damage to something. So I don't know. It feels to me like obviously worse Glorybringer, but I know that's not like, I can't just put that stamp on it because the warp does add something like a texture to the card that Glorybringer doesn't have. So I don't know. Maybe we test it. It's going to look very awkward in the same exact slot as Glorybringer, but no,
we would play this over Glorybringer, I think.
I don't think so, Chris.
Look, I'm Tonk method all the way, but I do think the people would riot. I say do it because I like a good riot, but
I mean, I don't know. Like, this comes down to, I think we've arrived at a point where one thing I think we need to be mindful of is sometimes like rotating stuff, even if we're pretty confident that it's worse, just to give people new cards to play with. But I don't think that our 360 card list, with the way that we have it structured, wants another 5-drop dragon. And I think if it's purely a power level discussion, I still think, because like, I mean, you guys are all very, very familiar with the pattern of Glorybringer enters, it kills the play that your opponent just made, and then eats their planeswalker, and like the game is over,
Yeah, I think the flip side of that is like you kind of need your red 5-drops to do some heavy lifting, because like,
agreed. Otherwise, you don't want to play them.
Yeah. So I don't know, like, I think this card is interesting, but it does feel like they played it very safe. Like, obviously 2 damage would have been insane. Obviously Warp 2 would have been crazy. So I don't know.
Yeah. So maybe this is exactly the card it needs to be, but I want to test it because the art is so freaking sweet.
It's so sweet. It's so sweet. But yeah, this just doesn't feel like, maybe if this card did 1 damage to target creature an opponent controls every time it attacked, instead of entering, right? Because it is a haste creature. I mean, obviously that's very different, but because it is a haste creature, you're gonna.
Oh, it's enter. I thought it was attack trigger. It's enter.
No, it's an ETB, right? So if you play this out and it sticks, like it only does that 1 time. After that, it's just a 4/5 flyer. It doesn't get any other value.
On the other hand, it does kill your opponent's Malcolm, even if they do blade it.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. There's true. That true. So
yeah, they always have a counter spell up though. They have a counter spell up there.
Yeah, they. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. It'll be interesting. Maybe it'll come out in the wash that people play this under context, and it's like, oh, this is better than you think that it is. Because I really, really, really want to play Cosmic Dragon. That frankly looks like it
Yeah.
could beat Nicol Bolas's ass.
Well, it's
Move
Teld,
on.
walk us
Yeah.
through the rest of red. I've got some gripes about this next card, but I'm the one who's wrong. I'll admit it.
I'm gonna be honest. I think this might be the best red card in the set. Which is, I guess isn't really saying much, but I actually think this card is kind of crazy. It's Terra Pact Intimidator. It's 1 in a red for a 2/1. Kavu Scouted Uncommon. When it enters, target opponent may have you create 2 lander tokens. If they do not, put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature. So it either is a 2 mana 4/3 or a 2 mana 2/1 that makes 2 game objects. Now, I think the trick here, because I think the rate of a 2 mana 4/3 is really insane. If you play it on turn 2, it puts your opponent in a real bind. But I think you're going to need to care about having a 2 mana 4/3 and also getting 2 artifacts, I think. Because if your opponent can just give you the artifacts and they're not doing anything, right? Like a traditional super linear red deck where like 2 artifacts that make mana isn't really what you want to be doing. I don't know how much you care. But as soon as you bring in cards like Legion Extruder, Torch the Tower, Galvanic Blast, the Bunny, the Regal Bunnicorn, any mana sinks in your deck that you really care about ramping towards, I think this card gets a lot better because now you're kind of, doesn't matter what your opponent chooses, both of them are bad for you. And obviously, Peasant, this card's completely absurd. But just even for the mainline cube, I think this is one of the more powerful cards in the set, I think. And these cards always play worse than they read, but both parts of this read good enough to me that I'm intrigued.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this card?
I think that for unrestricted, this reads like a Gruul card to me. Primarily because like if I know, like, let's say we've already played game 1. If you're playing like a blisteringly fast like Hazaret mono red aggro deck, I'm just gonna give you the 2/1 with like the 2 rampant growths like every single time, right? Like if I know that you're hyper aggressive, I'm just going to give you the side of it that I know that you don't actually want. Where I think that this card is really awesome is in like a Gruul deck, or maybe even like a Rakdos mid-range deck with a lot of removal, because in that situation, like, I don't want to give you a 2 mana 4/3. Like, I just don't want to do that, right? But if I give you a 2/1 body that can trade off for something and also gives you the opportunity to ramp into we're not playing it now, like Grave Titan or your Inferno Titan or whatever. I think that this is a mid-range card, is where I'm going with this. Like, I think I want to play this in a deck where if my opponent gives me a gigantic 2-drop creature, fantastic. And if they give me the slower variant that allows me to ramp up into my bigger black and red spells, whilst I'm like on turn 4, I can Rampant Growth / Doomblade your thing or whatever. I want to put this in the deck where no matter which mode you give me, I'm a happy camper. Obviously, if you draw it late, it's pretty much always going to suck unless you have artifact synergies, because your opponent is just going to give you the 2/1 that's going to ramp you into lands that you don't need. But a lot of 2-drops aren't phenomenal later in the game, so I don't really think that's a knock against it. But I don't think you should ever put this in your blisteringly fast aggro deck if your opponent knows that's what you are doing.
So this is the one card in the set that I think I'm just lower than like the whole rest of the world on. I don't really see it as like an impressive card, but
I don't either, really.
What I should say is that I feel like I'm probably more wrong than I am right about it, because when I read the card and I see 2 mana 4/3, I'm not impressed by that card. That is a good card, but I'm not like, okay, 2 mana vanilla 4/3, like let's fucking go. I think that is a good card, but not like nuts or anything. I just don't think stats and stats alone really get you there that much. But like 4/3 for 2 is good, so I don't want to undersell that. And then like especially in Peasant, you just can't ever give them the lander token, so it just is a 2 mana 4/3. It doesn't even have modality. It kind of has like fake modality, and then when you add that modality in, like it makes the card worse. So I am not like blown away by this, but I will recognize that like it's my gut telling me that this is not like a super impressive card, and that when like people actually talk through it and stuff, it's like, yes, okay, if I get a 2 mana 4/3, like, even though I don't think that's a super impressive card, that is a good card. And then if you ever get the lander tokens, you should be able to make good use of those. So, but I agree with Chris's point that like, if I'm putting this in a deck because I need it to be a 2 mana 4/3 and I get the lander tokens instead, that's kind of crappy. Like this, that's actually not that good for decks that just don't care about the excess of lands. So it is probably more potent in the Gruul space or in the decks that are like trying to kill you as quickly as possible. But even there, it's like, I don't know. I guess I can just get cyclical with this, but I would say that I'm a notch below where a lot of the rest of the people seem to be on this card, but I still recognize that there is power in, you know, a 2-mana 4/3 here.
Yeah, it sounds like we're all pretty much, I mean, like different levels of excitement, but I think we're all in agreement that you need to be able to be happy with either side of the card when you get it. I will say one of the things that I do think is like 4/3, when you start talking about Magic stat lines, like the difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 is all like really, really big. Once you get up to about 4, that's where it stops being a big upgrade. But like the difference between in a vacuum, a 3/3 is a 7-turn clock and a 4/4 is a 5-turn clock. It is a noticeable upgrade, like compared to what, you know, just in terms of stat lines, what it's trading with, that sort of thing. So like, I do think 4/3, like 3/3, I wouldn't be excited, but 4/3 is where I start raising my eyebrow and being like, all right, well, this is a lot of damage.
It does matter in matches where the stats of your creatures matter, whereas like some control decks like don't care how big your creatures are as long as they don't give you value and stuff like that. So, you know, a 4/3 for 3 is above rate in a world where everything's like a 2/3 or 3/2 for 2. So yeah, like it is a meaningful upgrade on the stat line. I don't want to undersell that.
It's the type of card where I think about it and I'm like, oh, it's good in this situation, it's good in this situation. But then, you know, you think about the fact that like there are a lot of red 2-drops that are just like great creatures that you play in every deck that always do what they do, and that thing is always good. And it makes me wonder if there's like room for it. My instinct is like 90% of the time your opponent is just going to give you a 2/1 that made 2 rampant growths, and like in order for that to have been a worthwhile play, I'm going to make you spend the mana to get more lands, and you're also going to have to put those lands to use, and that's also going to have to be good.
Dude, you're speaking my language. You're really selling me on this card. I'm always getting if I get a 2/1 for 2 that always draws me 2 rampant growths. Are you
like play against me? Play against me.
Like, give me that.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I want to be, like, I'd have to be in a pretty specific deck for me to be happy with playing that on turn 2 instead of, like, Karizev.
Like every deck I've ever drafted, yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say is, like, my perspective, I would almost, like, if I'm a deck that needs to attack your life total to win, I would almost always just want Karizev instead because it always deals 3 damage. And
sure, just don't draft linear aggro decks. Never have that problem. Draft mid-range decks.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very cool design. I'll give it that. Like, it has enough nuance to get you thinking about it. And Danelius brought this up that it gives your opponents the opportunity to misplay, but I feel like that just preys on, like, weaker players anyway who don't need that sort of disadvantage anyway. So I don't give cards points for like being better against worse players, but I guess that's true.
I think that part of the reason I get excited about cards like this is Legion Extruder is a card that I have a love affair with, and I pretty much love any card that incidentally fuels that while just being like in that case, you know, you're playing your Legion Extruder deck, you're fine with a 4/3, you're actively happy if you get 2 landers. So like, I don't know. I think you do have to care about both sides. You can't just want to be a linear aggro deck with this card, but man, the rate is so good on both parts.
Yeah, they knew where they were going when they designed the card. A couple other red cards Teld.
Yeah,
this one's sweet.
These last 2 cards are more sweet than good. Like, I actively think the card we just talked about is going to be potentially very good. I'm willing to be wrong about it because the Punisher effect's always playing a little worse than they read, but I think that card is actively very good. I think these are more fun and memey. So first up is Pain for All. It's 2 and a red for an enchantment aura at rare. Enchant creature you control. When this aura enters, enchanted creature deals damage equal to its power to any other target, and when the enchanted creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to each opponent. And like, yeah, no stats, 3 mana, sorcery speed, get blown out by hard removal, but boy, is that a lot of damage.
Yeah, I mean, land this on a big overstated creature, and you get it's just a bunch of direct damage, right? That's like the whole thing. Oh, I guess the first ability can hit any target, and the second ability only hits your opponent. So yeah, this is kind of like a rabid bite, right? Like a punch spell that leaves behind this aura that's gonna punish your opponent for like dealing with it with damage.
Unless you need damage, and then you just point at face and attack, and they're like, all right, well, all these things did poorly for me.
Yeah, this is the type of card that I would like love to be great in enough situations to be good. And I'm not saying like, oh, I would love it, but I don't think that it is. I honestly, this is a card that like your opponent will play it sometimes and you'll be like, I cannot believe I'm about to die to Pain for All. Like I'm about to die. Like I can hear somebody who thinks they're too good to lose to this card, like putting out like the Clarion, like Yeah. Like, but you, I can't believe I lost to my opponent. He's not even supposed to be playing this card.
This card's so bad. How could it just kill me from 10?
Yeah, so and it's cool, and I like the art. Weirdly, like it has this really bizarre kind of like sense of perspective. Like I don't really even know what I mean by it. It kind of reminds me of like really old 40K art where they were like making dreadnoughts with like the proportions kind of off because for whatever reason people just. Anyway, my thoughts on fantasy and sci-fi art from the 80s aside. Cool card. No idea how to evaluate it at all. I know that it is my job to evaluate cards for you here.
Yeah.
I refuse to do that in this situation. I just don't. I don't know.
If I always knew I was going to have enough 3-power creatures in my deck, or 3 or bigger, and I always knew my opponent was not going to be on Oops No Creatures Control, I think I would be super into this. That is to say, if you're in limited, I think this card actually could be really good.
Probably.
But I think that my problem is that what do you do when your opponent's in-game plan is to cast a Malcolm on turn 2 and then hold up counter spells and removal and hard removal spells for the rest of the game?
Yeah, your opponent goes Island Swamp, and you're like, well, I tried.
It was fun.
I did the best I could. Yeah. Okay, what's the munitions card?
Yeah, all right, so this is the munitions card. It's Weapons Manufacturing. It's 1 in a red for an enchantment. At rare, whenever a non-token artifact you control enters, you create a colorless artifact token named Munitions with, when this token leaves the battlefield, it does 2 damage to any target. So this is a cheap enchantment that makes a bunch of random game artifacts. I feel like this is going to be a complete... I expect this card to be very exciting for certain Commander players. I'm sure that this is completely broken in Commander. I'm waiting for somebody to explain why. But this card's really cool. If you're doing artifact synergies, like there's a lot here. You know, it works really well with the sack stuff. And I'm not going to go through the process of thinking about all the cards that you can work with this, but just there's a bunch of them. Like Cryptic Coat, for example, can make munitions for 5 mana every turn. I'm sure that's good somewhere. You know, there's all kinds of stuff like that you can do where you get non-token artifact ETBs pretty reliably, and then you just have to find a way to, you know, get the munitions to leave the battlefield. You have to have some sort of, you have to work a little bit, but this is there's a really high ceiling here. There's a lot of cool things you can do. It reminds me of Food Fight. You know, that card obviously was more about cashing in on your artifacts, but I love those sort of style of cards. Just like make little random artifacts. And this is the dinkiest of all artifacts. We can't even manually crack it. We got to find a way to do it. We got to crack our eggs.
Munitions would have been cool to see more of. This is the only card that makes them. So
real missed opportunity here.
Yeah, play this in your affinity cubes and such. Don't put it anywhere else. It seems you'll know if your cube wants this sort of card or not. That moves us into green. Green actually has a couple cards we're talking about here. The first one, Chris's invitational card. I'm sure he loves this sort of thing. You know how Quest and Beast has like 80 lines of text and they all matter, but you always get got because you forget about them. This one has 80 lines of text that don't matter. So it's just like all. Yeah, the Frenzy Bay. Like, it has so many lines of text that just don't matter unless you're in the matchup where they matter, and then they mattered, like, a lot. But,
yeah. Do you like to design cubes where you overtune things and then play ham-fisted answers to those things that make people feel like they weren't supposed to do the thing in the first place? Enjoy Frenzied Bailoff, which is 2 green... a green, I should say, for a 3/2, can't be countered, trample haste, with creature spells you control can't be countered, and combat damage can't be prevented. Buckle up, folks. They are clearly gearing up to print Bant Fog back into Standard. This is how you know. You heard it here first.
Oh, this is an omen of Turbo Fog coming
this
back.
This is an omen of Turbo Fog. It's coming back. Yeah, this card sucks and I hate it. I mean, you guys can talk about it. I hate this.
I mean, I was really happy when that Wicker Folk guy came out in Duskmourn, and it was 3/2 haste for 2. I think that's just a 3/2 trample haste for 2 is a pretty good stat line. But like, this just has so much. The only reason you would put this in a cube is either you're green devotion, green aggro, or you just want more answers to like counter spells. And we just got Surak like in what, Tarkir Dragonstorm?
Yeah,
so
and even that is like of a questionable power level. I'm sort of
Balustrade Worm too. Like, how many of these things do you really need to like hose the
spells? If somebody put this in the file and was like, let's test it after like I heard no to Carnage Tyrant, I was gonna like throw a huge tantrum.
I think this is, I mean, like, it's probably a better card than Carnage Tyrant, but like, you know, you just Doomblade and move on with life. You shock it.
Yeah, it dies to tragic trajectory.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know, like, I mean, it stomps pretty hard.
It's fine. It's fine. Like if we're going out of our way to make green aggro a thing, like maybe I would.
Sure.
Like if we really wanted that to be a thing, I'd be like, okay, we should probably look at this. But there's so much nothing text.
I do like the art. The art is a little reminiscent of Ikoria to me, with like those crystals snapping underfoot, which I kind of like that callback. This is a laser guided bomb pointed at a very specific color in a way that like screams constructed to me. I'm just not interested in this.
You know, Greek mythology, the Hydra, you cut one of its heads off like to grow back. If you cut a Questing Beast's heads off, it turns into a frenzied Bela. Teld, do you want to try and convince me of this card that I'm like?
I can't wait to hear this one.
This is Gene Pollinator. It's a single green mana for a 1/2 artifact robot insect, and you can tap an untapped permanent you control to add 1 mana of any color. I just wanted to mention this one because it's got a better stat line than some of the previous versions. It also can tap any permanent, so you can tap like enchantments or creatures or artifacts or whatever you want.
Or
you
lands.
Can tap. Or lands. You can use your lands to filter. That way you're never color screwed. Yeah. Do I think this card is incredible? Not necessarily, but it is pretty open-ended, and that's going to matter to somebody somewhere, especially if you're trying to gate the power of mana dorks.
Chris, can we shake hands and move on with this?
Yeah, fully agree. No, I do. I will say, Teld, I understand like the call out, like the fact that this is an artifact and interacts with like any type it can filter. Like this has enough sort of general weirdness going on that it will have value in a design. It's just not going to be one of ours, I don't think.
Hey, this into that 3/2. You have 2 creatures tapped on your end step. You put a +1 counter on something.
There you
That's
go.
probably. Yeah, I hate Jaspar Sentinel Style War, especially at higher level cubes. Like,
huge fan of those cards.
Yeah, we just have reverse opinions on this style of cards. So I get the shout out here.
So, are you guys ready for the resident, the once per set green hammer in search of a nail?
Yeah, what's the hell's going on with this card?
All right, yeah. So we've got Aura Borid. It's 2 green for a 1/3 plant worm. Man, this better have a good effect. It's a mythic, probably does. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you put X +1 counters on each creature you control, where X is this creature's power, including itself. So you play this, and it immediately, at the beginning of combat, becomes a 2/4 and puts a counter on everything else you control. And then next turn, it puts 2 counters. And then next turn, it puts a bunch more counters, and then a bunch more counters, and it just scales up. If you get to a second combat step, you win the game, probably.
Yeah, if this lives for 1 turn, it's a 4/6 that put 3 +1 counters on all your other creatures. If it lives for 1 turn.
Man,
That's
it would be really
insane.
funny to have like aspirant on board too. So like you go to combat, you just like stack your triggers to put the aspirant counter on.
Oh
this
yeah,
first.
what?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
you just
totally,
sorcery
yeah.
speed off a Tyvar stand for like X = 4, and this thing get, and then all your
Anyway,
creatures
your
get like
Tyvar
6
stand.
+1/+1 counter. So this is just, I mean, again, embracing Green's philosophy of green sucks, so just make it pump out insane amounts of stats and hope that's good enough. Like this is the type of card we're supposed to play because it's new, but it's either it dies to polar alert or whatever. Like it either dies to lightning strike before you hit combat, or the game just ends the following turn, assuming you have any board presence. Like, I don't know.
Can you imagine being the red player? You tap out for your breaches, your opponent ramps out Aura Borid, and you just stare at the lightning strike in your hand as sad music starts playing?
Yeah, you missed your opportunity.
Shouldn't have played a threat. You should have known.
And yeah, I mean, this card has insane upside, and I don't know. It's still probably not good enough for like constructed or anything, but
Yeah, what's the phrase? This is the best green guard that'll never see constructed play.
yeah, the Agasaurus or whatever.
I do like that it has implications for going wider rather than taller too. I like that about it.
It does.
You do both at the same time, though.
Well, yes, yeah, you do both at once. Hey, look, this right here is a reason to play like 3/1/1s for 3.
Yeah. I mean,
Totally.
Sandstorm Salvager on 3, and I mean, any 2-drop
Blade
doesn't
Splicer.
matter. Whatever 2-drop you want on 2.
Yep.
Sandstorm Salvager on 3, Blade Spicer on 3, this, and then you add, I don't know, 4 or 5 power to the board that turn, and then the following turn the game is presumably over if they didn't kill this. So
Yeah, this is kind of in the vein of like 4-mana Defiler of Vigor, because Defiler of Vigor has like a very similar gameplay. Obviously, that's a 6/6 with Trample, but like it's got the same kind of vibes where it's like, all right, well, you either kill this or I untap with and win the game, because there's you just don't have any outs after that. God bless, this is a lot of damage.
The other thing that's always nice about cards like this too is, and we've obviously we just significantly cut back on how many of them we're playing, but if you are in an environment where you're not cutting back on these at all, one of the things that makes Defiler a Vigor such a powerful card, which is a 5-mana 6/6 trample that discounts your shit, and then every time you play a green permanent, all of your green permanents get a +1/+1 counter. One of the things that we identified with that really, really early on was like, oh, one of the things that's good about this is like your dorks get you into it faster, and then it makes your dorks relevant after you don't need them for mana anymore. They're just like little bodies to put all this power and toughness on top of. If you ramp into this and like you have a couple dorks on board when you play this, like your dorks are gonna have accelerated out mana, and then they're going to be attacking creatures as well, which is always like a nice overlap with these cards that read specifically like green-white cards. Like, well, they make your dorks relevant in late game, and mana dorks that accelerate you early and then become killer threats later, that is an insane 1-mana investment, and this is the type of card that can make that 1-mana investment do shit like that. So, interesting card, for sure. Answer or die, pretty much, unless you play it immediately after a board wipe or something.
This strikes me as the type of card we should play because there's a little bit of wiggle room with green 4s, and then like we'll.
Ulvenwald Oddity's been here forever.
Because people will feel bad.
I think Ulvenwald Oddity is better than this on average.
It might be.
Haste is super relevant on that card. I was off of it for a while, but I've been so impressed by 4/4 haste. That being said, this ceiling is obviously to the moon. I just mean that, like, Ulvenwald being able to be like, all right, well, I'm going to slam this and hit you for 4 because you had the audacity to tap out is like.
So I added another green card here that I'm less high on this one, but I felt like there was wiggle room because we didn't pull out too many cards from the set. So Might Form Harmonizer is 2 green for a 4/4 rare insect druid. It has landfall, double a creature's power until end of turn. And then it has warp for 2 and a green. So the warp thing is a little weird to me here because, like, if you're warping this on 3, you're not playing a land. Like, you have presumably already played your land to warp this on 3, unless you're doing something with dorks, but then you don't have creatures to whose power is worth doubling because you tap them for mana or whatever. And then if you play this on 4, it's not like you can follow up with a land drop that turn either. So where this card really would shine is like as a 5-drop followed by a fetch land or something, in which case, this is quadruple in a creature's power or something like that, which can presumably end a game. Like if you have a Gonosaur, I know that's kind of like, let's use Ulvenwald Oddity as an example. You have a 4/4 Trampler on board. You play this, you play a fetch land, you crack it. That creature goes up to 16 power for the turn, or you can spread it out or whatever. And this itself attacks for 16 with a fetch land. So this can put a lot of power on board. I don't think Warp adds very much to it. It is kind of reliant on a fetch land meta, and we're leaning ever closer to cutting our fetches for Triumph. So I don't think this will get there in the long run, but if you are playing a fetch land environment and you have like a bunch of big green trampling creatures, this can push a ton of damage.
Would this have been broken if they had just given it trample?
I mean, it would essentially be a 4/4 8/8 trampler, right?
Yeah,
like that's kind of like what it would be. And then if you do anything with like Fabled Passage, I mean, it attacks as a 16 power creature with a fetch. So
I mean, this is just like Tifa, but it has base stats.
It turns any creature into Tifa. That's the joke. Is it? Anything becomes Tifa.
I like the art. I wish we were looking at something I thought was better.
I will say Tifa warp this fetch land does sound hilarious.
Oh yeah, Tifa into this, yeah.
You like double.
All right, so that's not like a slam dunk card, but I felt like I had to mention that one because of the damage output with fetch lands.
This is a slam dunk
though. Yeah. Hey, Green Sun Zenith. This is the only special guest card that we felt was really worth talking about, and
probably also the best art among the or like the one that I find least offensive. I think this one's actually kind of amusing.
The arts are all kind of interesting as individual. They're just not. I've said this on many alternate arts. They're just not good Magic the Gathering game pieces. Mm-hmm. They're fine art. There's nothing wrong with this art. It's just when you look at it next to I don't know, other green cards, it's like, ugh, that's awful. Green Sun Zenith, was once banned in Modern. It's green X, search your library for a green creature card with mana value X or less, put it on the battlefield, and then the Zenith shuffles itself back in.
Hey guys, Sin, fetchable.
Hey, 8 mana, go get Sin. 8 mana,
go get Sin, baby.
Yeah. Or 5 mana, go get your Aura board.
Yeah, that's right.
We fiddled around with the kind of green X versions of this, and none of them have ever been that impressive, like the Finale of Devastation, the Invasion of Ikoria, but maybe knocking it down to just green X, even if it can only fetch green creatures, is like probably worth the test. This is a traditionally, pretty powerful card for green decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 1 mana, it really does make a huge difference, right? Okay, so let's assume that your acceleration starts on 2, because we've cut down on the number of 1-drop dorks tremendously. Like, going 2-drop dork into turn 3, tutor up and play whatever the best 3-drop is in my entire deck for the situation that does what I need doing right now, whether it's like seeing more cards or ramping or putting something big on, or whatever it happens to be, right, is a lot better than, like, go fetch whatever the best 2-drop in this situation is if I don't have anything else to do. That 1 mana, I mean, I think the best way to think about Green Sun Zenith is, it's a 1 mana tutor any green creature as long as you can afford to cast that creature this turn. Which is obviously, like, not the same as a tutor, but, like, the difference between that 1 green and 2 green is very big.
Yeah, I think there's a notable downgrade in our environment at the moment, given that you can't fetch 1 mana dorks. We didn't get Arbor, Dryad Arbor on the sheet. So, like, some of the, it's going to be harder to hit this on, like, a 1 or 2 mana play. But I think the flexibility of this card, I do think the second green is a huge deal. Like, it's not unreasonable to have, like, 5 mana go get a 4-drop. 5 mana go get a 3-drop is pretty anemic as a play. So I think this card is less good in our environment than perhaps it would have been if we'd gotten Dryad Arbor or if we still had all of the 1 mana dorks. That being said, if you've got a Birds of Paradise in your deck, this is just a second copy of that in the early game. And then because it shuffles in, it also ends up being a good top deck afterwards, which is kind of the joke on this card, right? Is that you play it on, turn 2 or turn 3 to go get your mana dork, and then you, from there, can draw it into the late game to go get your, 7-drop out of your deck or your 5-drop or whatever.
Yeah.
Lots of flexibility. Historically powerful card. We're gonna try it.
Can also fetch gold cards that include green in their cost. Atraxa comes to mind for high power little cubes. And then I've always thought about this as a green spell with a kicker cost of every green creature in your deck. So, like, I mean, kind of like a demonic tutor has a kicker cost of every other spell in your deck.
Sure. Yeah. There's a certain 6 mana dinosaur ape that you can get with this, and that'd be pretty good.
Oh man, that would be insane.
Whatever could you be referring to?
I'll have to look it up on Scryfall. We're gonna move on to gold card. Singular gold card. Teld, did you add Sir Von Dam here? Honorary
I did add Sir John Claude Von Dam. Or Von Dam.
It's the only gold card on the list, so go for it.
It's white and a black for a 2/2 legendary human knight. Has vigilance and menace. When another creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a +1 counter on it and you gain life. And when it dies or is put into exile while its power is 4 or greater, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. This card is fairly boring, but hey, the rate's pretty good. Vigilance and menace and +1 counters getting big is all a nice combination. And if you get a couple of triggers on it, your opponent elects to kill it, you get to get some more value on the way out, even if they path it, which is not something you normally get to do. So weak to bounce spells, of course, but I think the rate here is really, really good. And it kind of signals a bit of like the way I've been liking to play black-white, which is kind of like more of like a dead guy ale. Like, we're curving out with creatures, we have some incidental death triggers along the way while we're trying to beat our opponent down. So I think the card's like, I don't think it's exciting or head turning or anything, but I think the rate is pretty good and the combination of keywords is good.
I think it's kind of head turning, right? I mean, in one way, just because it's whenever another creature you control dies, you put an X. It's not gated to once per turn. Right, so you can also sacrifice things at instant speed in order to grow it the number of times that you need it to grow in combat, and then getting it to the size where when it dies, it destroys up to 1 other target non-land permanent, like including situations where it's like, okay, you can double block this thing that's going to eat your planeswalker, but if you do that, I'm going to kill both of your creatures, and then I'm also going to destroy your planeswalker. I think I agree. It's got a lot of black-white text on it that's not particularly exciting, but I actually think this is really good.
Oh yeah, I think it's a good card. I just meant that it's not exciting to read. It's just like good rate.
This is maybe the most black-white creature I think I've ever read. Because I'm serious, because there are 2 things that black-white creatures do, right? They care about stuff dying, they gain life, and like they Ashen Rider stuff. And this does all of those things.
Also very black-white art, vigilance for white, menace for black.
Art's
Yes.
sick. I've been, there are a lot of guys in spacesuits art in this, but this one's pretty cool. I like this one.
No, this one's incredibly sick. It's just a shame that like every good black-white card that they print is like a 2-drop, because black already has so many good 2-drops, and the Orzhov cards are 2-drops. But I think that even if we end up, I don't know what we'll cut to play this, but I think that this is a worthy package for 2 mana split over 2 colors.
Yeah, one other thing is it doesn't have to be +1 counter power. So if you just curve this into the like Maul of the Skyclaves or something like that, it does just trigger that.
Ah, interesting. Or anything that's antheming it or whatever. This seems like a great candidate for unearthing.
Yep. And then from there, if you can blink it too while it has 4 power, that counts as putting it into exile. It'll come back into play. You'll get to blow something up.
Ephemerate, bringing it back, baby.
Some play there for sure. Sweet card for sure. Only gold card on the list because everything's so thematic and like tied to its color pair and artifacts and stuff like that. So
yeah, Commander stuff was super narrow this time around too.
So as far as lands go, I did just want to asterisk here that shock lands are back for people who maybe in paper need to collect them or whatever. There's 5 of them in this set, and I'm going to assume they're not putting shock lands in Universes Beyond set. So my guess is that Warwind at the beginning of 2026 will have the other 5. But
are they in the standard run?
Yes, yeah, they're in the main set. So they're
there's
shock lands.
Oh, okay. No, for whatever reason, I shortcut mentally to fetch. Okay, so they're printing shocklands again.
Shocks, yeah, not fetches.
Yeah. Okay. Safeguards have in standard.
The only main set land we're going to talk about here is Secluded Starforge, which is a rare land that taps for colorless mana. You can pay 2 and tap it, and tap any number of untapped artifacts you control to give a creature +X+O equal to the number of artifacts you tapped. That's sorcery only. You can also pay 5 and tap it to create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. And Teld, you pointed out that this is kind of like in line with a lot of the other tokens that can spit out bodies or spit out value, like Fountain Port and Murex and stuff like this. It reads like it's very artifact centric, but if you like cross that second line of text off, even though it will matter some amount of the time, like a colorless land that pumps out 2/2s for 5 mana has some late game utility. It's obviously very clunky, like last resort types text, but you can activate that at instant speed, so it's not nothing either.
Yeah, one thing that puts this well above the other cards of this vein for me is that Murex and Fountain Port both created cards that could not block. Murex, they just couldn't block at all, and the Fountain Port made tapped fish. Whereas this just puts a 2/2 into play as an immediate blocker, and you know, when you get into these like late game grind fests, particularly like with non-blue decks where sometimes you don't have just infinite things to do with your mana, this could be a good card to grind. It's kind of good against control, assuming they don't just assuming you can deal with the Scarab God and the Quintorius. You know, they may not have as much clock if you can get rid of like their cheap threats. So like it's kind of narrow, but I think these cards typically play pretty well, and I think this is a much better in terms of how it fares into like random creature decks than a lot of the previous ones, and obviously double the power output compared to Murex and Fountain Port, so kills a little quicker.
We probably got enough wiggle room with colorless cards to try out a utility land if you think it's worth it. The bonus sheets, so Stellar Sights, like we said, 45 lands, a lot of them misses, a lot of them are really powerful cards. It's not really worth going in too deep on too many of them. I think the big headliners are Ancient Tomb and Strip Mine, which are obviously like hashtag not for us cards, but for like timeless and, maximum power level cubes on Arena. They will be very, very excited for Ancient Tomb and Strip Mine. Gemstone Cavern, also for people doing combo stuff, might be a big selling point for our...
Is Wasteland reserve list?
Is what?
Is Wasteland reserved list?
No, but I think they just didn't put Wasteland on here because Strip Mine's just a strictly better Wasteland. Although, they put Crystal Query on here and then also put Cascading Cataracts on here. I guess
That's
they just didn't...
Yeah.
They might not have wanted it for the limited format to be like multiple, like tons of lands that were just like land destruction lands or something.
I guess you also can't have your lands being worth too much, right? We can't have too many valuable lands in one set. We got to save something next time.
Dust Bowl is on this list as well, so maybe they wanted to avoid too many miser like land destruction things. Other notable ones, the entire cycle of like Ravnica and Battle for Zendikar creature lands are here. We already had the weaker cycle, but we're getting the better ones this time, and they've mostly dropped off. Yeah, they've dropped off in traditional Magic for the most part, but Celestial Colonnade, Creepin' Tar Pit, Raging Ravine in particular, I think those three still kind of hold up and could be worth considerations for different kinds of decks. Mm-hmm. The other ones we're probably not going to chat about too. Lava Claw Reaches. If you could tell me what Lava Claw Reaches does, I'll give you $5. But
additionally, we also got Ink and Blinkmoth Nexus, which again, those are kind of in the vein of probably power crept out of being interested in them, but they are cards that we have access to now if you want them.
I think we already had Blinkmoth.
Did we?
Yeah, we already had Blinkmoth. We played it for a while, but nobody ever put it in their deck ever for any reason.
Oh, actually, we did, because I remember mutating on into it, and it was still a 1/1, and I was like, oh, it was in an anthology or something.
I forgot we got that card.
Yeah, we've had Blinkmoth Nexus. It reads like it should be, like, fine to me, but no one ever played it or activated it, and it's not like it's bad, but it's like, why use a cube slot on it? I have to say, the Celestial Colonnade and Creeping Tar Pit arts are... Actually, I really like the Raging Ravine. I really like the arts on these. I'm typically not an alternate arts guy, but like especially Creeping Tar Pit looks super cool.
Yeah, these were interestingly some of the only ones that you can actually make out what the art is. Most of the other ones are just all like kind of planet with spaceship on it.
Would you call them stellar sights?
Oh, I might, yeah. For whatever reason, Raging Ravine is really appealing to me. I don't typically like a lot of red in art, but like it's really giving across this like overgrowth of sentient, insane, like alien vegetation ripping a planet apart.
A little unsettling looking art, but anyways, yeah.
Did you want to mention High Market here? I accidentally skipped over the High Market. It's just a free sack outlet.
Sure, we got High Market, free colorless sack outlet, worse than Phyrexian Tower for the decks that are interested in that effect, probably. But it's I think it's an expensive commander card if I remember right.
Give you the no, not anymore. It used to be many moons ago. So yeah, I mean, there's more stuff on that bonus sheet, but a lot of it's colorless lands, a lot of it's gimmicks, a lot of it is like flavor stuff. Like Meteor, I'd never seen Meteor Crater in my life. It's the worst land I've ever read. I kind of wish, like Reflect and Pool. There's some interesting stuff there. For the most part, we're mostly interested in the creature lands, and then the Timeless Cube will be interested in the Ancient Tomb Strip Mine as well. So. That brings it to a close. I mean, we normally have like a pretty large multicolor section at the end, but we just really didn't pick out very much. And, again, a lot of stuff was very thematic here, tied to the retail limited format. So a lot of it doesn't translate well to a high power cube like ours. That's like looking for macro archetype synergies and things of that nature. So there are a lot of other really powerful cards in the set that aren't really relatable to what we're talking about here. So go check it out for yourself. Let us know what we're missing and stuff like that. But just recognize that we're not talking about super, super thematic stuff. So overall impressions of the set, I think mine are pretty brief. I think the set is cool. Like I'm not quite as excited as I was for some of the previous sets like Tarkir Dragonstorm and stuff like that. It feels like there's something missing, but I can't quite put my finger on like what is missing. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the big headline and mechanic with station and spacecraft just feels like a huge whiff to me, and it just feels like that space could have been something else, or maybe I'm wrong about it and I need to like play it and see what it's like and see if it actually works out, and if it does work out, it'll be kind of cool. But it just feels like there's like a big gap there with all the spacecraft stuff going on. I do think Warp is really sweet as like an actual headline and mechanic. I like some of the artifact tokens. I wish they'd done munitions a bit more. And I think the character designs and the art of the set is just actually kind of cool and feels like a unique Magic set. So I'm kind of on board with like the setting and the lore and what, not the actual story, but like the story they're trying to tell through the cards, I think kind of works for me. I like the creature designs. I like the races, like the jellyfish people and the Drix and stuff like that. So I'll give it a thumbs up. It's not quite getting to that like all timer. I'm super excited for this set kind of status, but I do think there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, and just enough to like wet the whistle for Cube. Like at least a card or two per color per section, I think is, acceptable for a standard set these days. So that's kind of where I'm at on old EOE here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. Probably the most like looked forward to set of the year for me, and I'm kind of with you that it looks fine. The flavor seems okay. The art's fine. It feels magic-y, but there's just something's missing. It feels like it kind of feels a little just slapped together in a way when I think about like the way some of these archetypes are going to intersect or play together. Hopefully it'll play out better, but the station seems like a huge miss. And it feels like most of the cards that are interesting are cards that require a lot of artifacts in play to do something, or they're like these big expensive cards. We just got off of a very good set in Final Fantasy. I've kind of downgraded it from where I initially was, and I haven't played a huge amount of it, mostly watching it and hanging out and just watching the format develop. But, it still a good format, so it's got some big shoes to fill, I guess. I kind of came down on this one, though. It feels like I kept waiting for some cool things to happen, and then we got to the end of spoiler season. It was like, oh, that happened. So, I felt like I was really stretching for cards to talk about. The lands thing being the way it was, just not having cool uncommon lands is a bummer. The best thing about these bonus sheets is the context and texture they add to the limited format when they have, interesting uncommons in particular. So none of these cards are particularly interesting. They're just gonna be there.
Should mention that the seller sites cards only appear in 1 out of 8 packs too. So they're like, you're gonna have 3 per draft pot. Like they're not even gonna be like something to pursue or anything like that.
So yeah, I'm definitely down on this set compared to where I was kind of in the pre-spoiler hype season where I was really looking forward to it. But that's okay. I'm like, hopefully it'll be good. But yeah, I'm definitely a little lower on it than I was. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on here, but a lot of the power is gated behind synergies that we just don't have access to.
Mm-hmm. Chris?
I liked it well enough. I think expectations of it, whether people realize it or not, were probably like a little bit higher since it was sort of like magic in space. People were really looking for it to be like a knockout of the park. I think if it wasn't treading outside of traditional magic aesthetic space, it would probably just be kind of like, it's a fine set. So I can understand why it's like a mild letdown for some people. I think it's okay. I wasn't super invested in this set coming into it, and I like some of the stuff that came out of it. I would say this was pretty middle of the road for me. I would not mind seeing them do some more sci-fi concept, or maybe like the Middle Ages gets synthesized with sort of like high fantasy sci-fi trope stuff in the future. Just because I like that aesthetic. I like really slick aesthetics. This is kind of like an interesting taste of that. It kind of got me thinking like, I wonder like what you could do aesthetically with like a completely new card game that was based in a sci-fi universe rather than like a fantasy universe, just because I like sci-fi art a lot. But some cool cards. Nothing really like revolutionary came out of this for me though. Mm-hmm. And we didn't talk about a single Planeswalker, did we?
Tezzeret's the only one in the set.
Okay.
And Tezzeret's a all-in artifact card. So I mean, again, a cool card with really awesome art, but like, what are we going to say about it here? It works with artifacts, and we don't play artifacts, so
yeah. Looking forward to playing some new cards. Like I said, the blue cards are probably my favorites.
And on that note, you actually won't be talking about Planeswalkers for the next 6 months, because the next 2 sets are Universes Beyond sets that won't have Planeswalkers in them. So
wait, we're not. We're getting outside universe content for the next half of a year.
Avatar and
Spider-Man and Avatar are the next 2. Those are the last 2 sets of the year. That's it. The next in-universe Magic set is Lorwyn in 2026.
That's insane.
So, my enthusiasm level when we get to this, I'm sorry to the Spider-Man fans, but I will not be bringing top tier enthusiasm to this podcast.
Oh wait, this is the set where like the Spider-Man set's in paper, but the digital set is all going to be like completely new cards that they're somehow going to have to graft onto the existing
Arachno
mechanics.
Boy on Arena.
Yeah.
That's not the boy. I absolutely hope not.
And just previewing for anyone who's still listening at this, I will be crapping all over the Spider-Man aesthetic and flavor and all that. I don't know enough about Avatar to do that. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to take the set as it goes. I have literal zero connection with Avatar, so I don't have any strong opinions on it. I'm going to end up judging it strictly off the cards.
Yeah, so Atla fans, Spider-Man fans, sorry, but we're not going to come in with the same enthusiastic level as we did for Final Fantasy. Plus, we've got a few number of episodes to get out between now and Spider-Boy, whatever is going to happen on Arena. We even have to discuss whether we're going to talk about card names from the arena context or the paper context. Like, I have no idea.
Problem for future us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fully agree with that.
Anyway, thanks to everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed our review of Edge of Eternities. And, if you have opinions about Edge of Eternities, some cards that we didn't talk about, some generically powerful cards that we should be trying out in our cube, come join that Discord server and let us know what you're thinking. Find us on our socials at on Twitter at JankDiverGaming, YouTube.com/JankDiverGaming, find Teld streaming on Twitch.tv/TeldTalks or on YouTube also at Teld Talks. And we'll have a couple episodes before we get to the Spider-Man debacle. And I know one of the things we want to do is a development diary on white. We're looking at restructuring a lot of our white sections. So I think that'll be one of the next couple. And I still want to do that episode on like the quote unquote sets that made us and, which sets are contributing to the cube and, which sets kind of have all-timer status for cubes and stuff like that. So some ideas floating around for our upcoming episodes. But yeah, thanks for bearing with me as I made my move across the country. And, this is probably coming out like a week later than it normally would. And that's going to go ahead and do it for this one. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you all next time.
Later.
Oh, man, there she is. It's the most beautiful girl in class. I didn't know she was going to be here. Oh, man, should I go talk to her? What should I say? I can feel my palms sweating. Holy crap, I'm nervous. Oh, God. Wait a second. Is she looking in my direction? Oh, no, I'm not ready yet. Yeah, she's definitely looking at me. All right, I have to go talk to her. Come on, Dan. Come on, man. You can do this. This could be the start of something great. Okay, I'm walking. I'm walking, taking steps. That's good. Deep breaths. Great. Don't act too nervous. Okay, here she is. What should I say? Oh, hello there. You're in my physics class, right? I'm glad to see you at the party. Good. She initiated conversation. We just have to seal the deal. We've practiced this. We just have to say something clever. Keep her attention. And, did she raise an eye? Yes, she raised an eyebrow. She's waiting for me to say something. Okay. I've got this. Just the first thing that comes to mind. And...
Sexy bunny rabbit hole.
Oh my God, get away from me, you freak. Blew it again.